a crash course on the Anunnaki from the foremost expert, Our True History.
The Anunnaki's home planet is in our solar system. It's about 4 to 10 times the size of Earth, based off of the description of the Enuma Elish and other tablets. The Anunnaki came from just that planet. I know there are bad researchers out there that say they are also from different planets in other solar systems. There is zero evidence for this. The reason why they say that is because there's carvings of stars, and the bad researchers have assumed the Anunnaki were telling us they come from there. However, if you watch my amazing documentary called How Did the Anunnaki Know About Our Solar System, I show their planet came from another solar system, 4.5 billion years ago. So if they are carving another solar system, then it might be showing their planet originated from there. I show evidence in that documentary. The planet called Nibiru has an orbit that takes 3,600 years to go to the outer solar system and then back round in between Jupiter and Mars. When their planet first entered our solar system, it smashed into a planet called Tiamat that broke up and became Earth and the asteroid belt. The planet it smashed into, called Tiamat, also had a moon called Kingu, and Kingu ended up becoming our moon. The Anunnaki are not reptilian. The reason why a few bad researchers say they are is because they have seen these small statues and believe they are reptilian Anunnaki. However, there are only 2 of these squashed clay figures, compared to the thousands, if not tens of thousands, of carvings showing what they really look like, which is us. They look like us because we were created in their image, in their likeness, as it says in Genesis 1:26, and also in the 14 tablets in Columbia University that are owned by the Rothschilds. The Anunnaki's race name is actually Gods. There is a huge amount of evidence for this. Please visit www.ourtruehistory.co.uk and scroll down on the homepage to where it says click here. You can see all the evidence there. Here is a small part of that video showing the Anunnaki were called gods. There was 900 Anunnaki originally came down. Anunnaki wasn't the actual original name for the race. I believe the race name is gods, or God, just like humans. And obviously it was down the line, it was translated into Elohim, and obviously we all praise gods, but people would praise humans if we went to their planet and created workers. When you break down the word Anunnaki, it actually does end up with the word Kai, which is the last word, being earth, and Kai is an actual name for earth back from them days. So it makes sense that the actual breakdown, which is how Zechariah Sitchin did it, Anunnaki, those that came from heaven, to earth, ki being earth.
JKI, place. Today's word is ki, which means place. It can also mean ground or earth, and is a term for the netherworld. Ki is also used as a determinative indicating something is the name of a place, but instead of being put before the place name, as is usual for determinatives, it's put after the place name. Lagash Kai, for example, to talk about the city of Lagash. You will find that everywhere except that Kai is the meaning of earth. There is nowhere that says Ki means princely seeds or royal blood or anything that Dr. Michael S. Heiser said it does.
The name Anunnaki roughly translates to those from heaven came to earth, and that's a team name for the older gods that were here on earth. The younger gods were called the Ajiji, meaning watchers or eye in the sky. They were called that because they were the ones that were on Mars as an away station, waiting for their planet to come near. Some really bad researchers have said the Igigi were created by the Anunnaki gods and were slaves to the Anunnaki. That's because they didn't research properly and read this part of the text in the tablets called Artra-Hassis. Tablet 1. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi. It does seem they made them, however the line under it says, carry the workload sevenfold. So when you read it properly, it says this: the great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. The documentary I mentioned before on my website has the full evidence the Igigi were the sons of gods. You might know them in the Bible as the sons of God that took wives. Heaven is space. Yes, in the Bible, as well as in the ancient texts, it talks about we can see the sun, the stars, and the moon in heaven. That means we can see heaven. Of course we can't see heaven. So where do you think the sun, the moon, and the stars are? In space. So when next time you read either the Bible or any of the ancient texts, when they're talking about going up into heaven in their chariots, yes, they're going up in spaceships. Because Nibiru smashed into Tiamat and that created Earth, Nibiru had life on that planet and seeded Tiamat, which became Earth. This means we got life from Nibiru to start all life here on Earth. The Anunnaki came to Earth because they had issues with their atmosphere. They believed that sprinkling gold particles in the atmosphere would help it repair. Their planet had a very small amount of gold. They tried mining the asteroid belt but lost 2 spaceships. There was a fight for rulership on Nibiru about 460,000 years ago, and their loser, called Alula, lost and fled in a ship to Earth. He found gold and told the others via some type of radio.
The reverse side of Moorhen Collection Akkadian Tablet MC2894A. Alalu set his course for snowy Earth, but kept his destination a secret. Alalu went to off-limits places. No one had been there before, and no one at the Hammered Bracelet had tried to cross there.
This is the description of what it was like on their planet while the hole in their atmosphere was there.
There was less joy in the land. The rain stopped and the winds got more robust. The amount of gas that volcanoes blew out didn't get worse, and the hole in the atmosphere didn't get fixed. Nibiru's circuits kept going around in the sky. It got harder to handle the heat and cold from circuit to circuit.
The first 50 Anunnaki came to Earth and set up a base. They called that place Eridu. Archaeologists agree that the oldest structures and location anywhere is in Eridu. The Anunnaki gods were 8 to 12 foot tall. They ended up mining in South Africa. We have evidence of ancient gold mines there. There are older mines in Africa that have been covered over with sand, mud, silt, and sediment from the Great Flood. To see the evidence and everything you need to know about the Great Flood, visit my website and search for the Great Flood. But the work was hard for the Ajiji, the younger gods, and they demanded help. The main Anunnaki were Enki and his half-brother Enlil. They were in charge. Enlil, although younger, was the main leader. They were sons of King Anu. King Anu mostly stayed on their planet Nibiru. This means Enki and Enlil were princes. Enki, one of the 2 princes, said he would create a new upgraded version of a creature here on Earth, Neanderthal. Enki did this. Read the translations called Enki and Nimna. And the first Homo sapien was born. The Anunnaki then created 7 more males and 7 females to breed. They were dark-skinned and was put to work in the mines in South Africa. They called that the Abzu. This happened around 300,000 years ago. The Homo sapiens couldn't talk, but they just about understood commands. These were the first Homo sapiens on Earth, and they were called Adamu. Do not confuse Adamu with Adam and Eve. I'll get to them later. Adamu means father of mankind, or humanity or mankind. Many people attach Adamu with Adam. You'll see later why that's wrong. Because of the long orbit of their planet, 1 day on their planet is 30 days here on Earth. This means they would live for over 500,000 years here on Earth. They would seem immortal to us. 200,000 years after creating Homo sapiens, the Anunnaki started to breed with the Homo sapiens. They had children and they were called demigods. Half Anunnaki and half human. Demigods. The first children born to an Anunnaki were 2 children we know as Adam and Eve. This is because the Prince Enki bred with 2 Homo sapien females, which he then called them Dawn and Dusk. The time of day they gave birth the boy and girl. Adam and Eve proper names are Adapa and Titi. If you want to see the full evidence of this, visit my website. These new Homo sapiens could speak and were smarter than the Homo sapiens. Enki put his new children on his orbiting spaceship for the first 24 years of their life. If you want to see evidence of this, visit my website and search Adam and Eve. The garden was on the spaceship, and another Anunnaki didn't like the fact their god's bloodline has been tainted by Enki having human children. So he told Adam and Eve to eat a fruit from a tree that Enki had already told them not to. Some of the children had gigantism, which means they were even bigger than the Anunnaki parent, who was about 8 to 12 foot tall. Those children who had gigantism were called the Nephilim. This religious site says this about the Nephilim. I'll explain more after. The Nephilim, the product of the sons of God mingling with the daughters of Adam, the great biblical giants, the fallen ones, the Rephaim, the dead ones. These descriptions are all applied to one group of characters found within the Hebrew Bible. Who are the Nephilim? From where do the heroes of old, the men of renown, come? The problem with the religious view is that they have mixed up Adamu and Adam. It's possible that the Nephilim were from Homo sapien, Adamu, or from Homo sapien sapien, because the Anunnaki bred with the Homo sapiens to give birth to Homo sapien sapien, but then they also bred with Homo sapien sapien. The reason why religious people say they are the product of the sons of God and not God is because the Igigi, remember the younger gods, were the ones that came down and stole human women. The Igigi, watchers, were then called the fallen angels. They were outcast for a period of time, and those Igigi that had kids allowed their giant children to eat everything, including other humans. Because their planet was not near Earth, you can probably guess they were pale-skinned. This is said many times in ancient texts, because their offspring with humans were pale, blue-eyed and white hair. Noah was also a direct child from Enki and a Homo sapien woman called Banash. That's why Enki wanted to save Noah. That's why Noah had blonde hair, blue eyes, pale skin, compared to Lamech, who was Banash's husband. He was dark-skinned. You can see all of the evidence of this on my documentary called The Great Flood. Please see my video. It's free to watch. Search Great Flood on ourtruehistory.co.uk. Some people have made a big thing about the Anunnaki holding bags and carvings. Sadly, they didn't bother to research. The bags are just leather bags. Not only do they tell us they had bags in text, there's also one in the Cairo Museum. None of the carvings of the Anunnaki gods show pockets, so there's no mystery. They just needed bags. The women Anunnaki, or goddesses, were never in charge the same way men were. They were still respected, but never abused. They were never told to wear any clothes they didn't want to. They had no face coverings, unless it was hot and it was their choice. Inanna became an exception to women in charge. She was a descendant from the bloodline of Enlil. She rose to power because of her beauty and cunning skills. In the end, she was feared as the goddess of sex and war. You may have noticed the Anunnaki have many different names. That's because they lived so long on Earth they could change their name, but also because in different places they were known as different names. Inanna is the ancient Sumerian goddess of love, sensuality, fertility, procreation, and also of war. She later became identified by the Akkadians and Assyrians as the goddess Ishtar, and further with the Hittite Sauska, the Phoenician Astarte, and the Greek Aphrodite, among many others. You'll see the Anunnaki posed for the statues and carvings. You've seen Inanna standing on lions. In India she was known as Kali, with the same type of pose. You might notice in some places they are coloured blue. That simply means sky gods. The reason we see the gods with wings is again showing sky gods when there was no colour added. If you would like to see the world's best Anunnaki family tree, with many of the names added from what they were called, simply visit my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk. mythology.co.uk. The men Anunnaki, they had long hair, allowed it to grow. They would put it in a turban or sometimes under a hat. They also grew beards. Beards appeared to be a status symbol. In their beards, they would braid lapis lazuli, which is a gemstone. The Anunnaki loved lapis lazuli, so much so the other brother, called Enlil, had a lapis lazuli throne made for him. Enlil was the main god on earth. In fact, the Bible even tells us that that god had a lapis lazuli throne. I can't imagine an almighty deity needing to sit down, but in the Bible, God sits down 20 times. Of course, the Bible is a copy of the Anunnaki text. Visit my website and scroll down to where it says, click here in big blue letters. I mentioned before that Noah was Enki's son. Noah's original name was Ziusudra. We know this because we actually have the original tablet in the British Museum, and that tablets tells us that Enki gave instructions to Ziusudra to be a conical boat, not a long boat. It was like a partly squashed football. The boat didn't have to do anything other than survive the tsunami. I'll explain about that soon. The tablet even tells the size of the ark and what wood it needs to be made from. The head curator of the British Museum has gave a lecture on it. You can find this on YouTube. Search Irvin Finkel, Noah's Ark. Before I carry on, I thought I'd let you know that although I'm talking about the Anunnaki in this video, I actually have researched so much more and have solved so many unanswered mysteries, if I may just tell you some of them. Have connected the Book of Enoch, ancient stone tablets, to Stonehenge. I have shown who made and what the carvings of what looks like a helicopter and spacecrafts in Abydos, Egypt, are. I have given the answer to who was at Atlantis, when and what happened to it. I have given the only decent explanation on why the Nazca 28-kilometre mountain range had the top sliced off. I've explained the reason for the granite boxes in the pyramids. I've created a 23-minute documentary using evidence on who the father of Jesus would have been. I believe I've worked out how and why we have elongated skulls in ancient times that were not head-bound. I am the person that worked out the 10 plagues of Egypt actually started in Israel. Göbekli Tepe, I have explained what it was for and who made it. I have made the best documentary on mermaids. I have shown who Lucifer was. I have shown who Satan was. I have put out the evidence that Jesus' father was not who you think he was. I even show the Bible named him over and over. I have gave details on why and when Easter Island had the statues. It's not when you think. I have shown evidence where the crystal skulls are not debunked. I even show evidence that the people that debunked it are not telling the whole truth. I have shown Adam and Eve were on a spaceship for the first 24 years of their life. And much more, all with evidence. The Anunnaki ate the same foods as us. They ate fish, wild animals, and even bugs. They would heat their meat up. They brought down from their planet sheep, goats, and even barley. They drank wine and beer. You're wondering, did we learn how to make beer from the Anunnaki? Yes, here's a direct translation from a tablet. Inanna and Enki, Seawall 1.3.1. So it came about that Enki and Inanna were drinking beer together in the Abzu and enjoying the taste of sweet wine. The bronze agar vessels were filled to the brim, and the two of them started a competition, drinking from the bronze vessels of Urash. As you can see, they were drinking beer and wine before we were even created. They played games. They laughed, loved, had anger and hate. They had the 7 deadly sins. They cried. They even cried when the earth was flooded over and humans were dying. I'll get to the flood soon. The women Anunnaki wore makeup. The men and women had jewellery, mostly gemstones. There may be a reason why so much gemstones were used. Gemstones appear to have healing properties. Maybe the Anunnaki knew this. The Anunnaki should have slept for 30 days and nights, because that's how long they would need to sleep, but they managed to stay awake 7 days and nights, then sleep 7 days and nights. This affected their health. In the tablets in Columbia University, the Anunnaki spoke about the creatures here on Earth, Neanderthals, and said they think that's what they were like. This means they know evolution and didn't believe they were created. However, they do mention the creator of everything. However, I have worked out the name that the Anunnaki gave to the creator of everything. Yep, visit my website. The Anunnaki never asked humans to sacrifice themselves. Way later, when humans were having trouble with crops, they would ask the gods for help. But the Anunnaki gods couldn't make rain, so they humans thought the gods were upset with them. They started to sacrifice animals, but that didn't work, and humans killed other humans in the hope that one of the many gods would help them. The Anunnaki never had a religion. People worshipped a god that was in control of that area. For example, Marduk was the god of Babylon, and anyone in that area worshipped him, regardless if they liked him. Think of being forced to worship. That's not a religion, that's control. The Anunnaki kept tight control over the humans. The Tower of Babel was a tower Marduk was making using humans. Enlil didn't like a tower that would be bigger than his, so Enlil got it shot down by Ninurta in his chariot. Yes, they called some of their craft chariots. Enlil then forced people to learn new languages, so they couldn't all work together to help Marduk again. The Great Flood. Here's a clip from my 1-hour documentary on the Great Flood. You can see the full documentary on my website.
And in Gilgamesh, to anticipate what I'm going to say by the end of the talk, the flood is bound up with knowledge.
I disagree. I think Noah tells Gilgamesh that the gods are an alien race. We know that Gilgamesh's mother is an Anunnaki. It says it in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Of course, a museum can't say the word aliens, so they have to say something else. But Noah would have met all the Anunnaki on the top of the mountain where the boat rested.
Here's a few versions of what happened the day of the flood. The Anunnaki allowed an ice shelf to break off Antarctica because they believed in destiny. Their planet Nibiru was due to come around, but this time its orbit and Earth's would be close. So close that Nibiru's size would shake the foundations of Earth. The Anunnaki knew this would have happened regardless if the humans were on Earth, so they allowed it.
At the very first glimmer of brightening dawn, there rose on the horizon a dark cloud of black, and bellowing within it was Adad, the storm god. The Anunnaki, remember the important gods, carried torches of fire, scorching the country with brilliant flashes. The stillness of the storm god passed over the sky, and all that was bright turned into darkness. For a day, the gales flattened the country. Quickly they blew, and then came the deluge. Even the gods took fright at the deluge. They left and went up to the heaven of Anu, lying like dogs curled up in the open. Sweet-voiced Belet Ili wailed, "The olden times have turned to clay." It's a complete reversion, right? Humans come from clay, and they've been returned to clay. Because I spoke evil in the God's assembly. How could I speak evil in the God's assembly and declare war to kill my people? It is I who gave birth. Those people are mine. And now, like fish, they fill the ocean. For 6 days and 7 nights, there blew the wind, the downpour, the gale, the deluge. It flattened the land. But the 7th day, when it came, the gale relented. The deluge ended. The ocean that had thrashed like a woman in labor grew calm. The tempest grew still. The deluge ended. I looked at the weather, says Utnapishtim. It's hard to remember he's speaking, right? It's all first-person narrative. I looked at the weather. It was quiet and still, but all the people had turned to clay.
This is translations that you can read in a book called Myths from Mesopotamia. We, the great Anunna, all of us agreed together on a plan. Anu and Adad were to guard above, I was to guard the earth below. Where you went, you were to undo the chain and set us free. You were to release produce for the people. You were to exercise control by holding the balance. The The warrior Elil, L gap of 30 lines. Vn, you imposed your loads on man. You bestowed noise on mankind. You slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. You must, and create a flood. It is indeed your power that shall be used against your people. You agreed to the wrong plan. Have it reversed. Let us make far-sighted Enki swear an oath. Enki made his voice heard Atrahasis III, and spoke to his brother gods, why should you make me swear an oath? Why should I use my power against my people? The flood that you mentioned to Mehmet. What is it? I don't even know. Could I give birth to a flood? That is Elil's kind of work. Let him choose. Let Shulat and Hanish march ahead. Let Erikal pull out the mooring poles. Let Ninurta march. Let him make the weirs overflow. Gap of 2 or 3 lines to end of column. VM, gap of 31 lines. OBV, I the assembly, do not listen to. The gods gave an explicit command. Elil performed a bad deed to the people. Catch ink. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to his master. Tablet ill, gap of about 10 lines. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to his master. Indicate to me the meaning of the dream. J, let me find out its portent. Enki made his voice heard and spoke to his servant. You say, I should find out in bed. 36. Make sure you attend to the message I shall tell you. Wall, listen constantly to me. Read Hut, make sure you attend to all my words. Dismantle the house, build a boat.
You can see the full documentary on my website. I have created a timeline that you can get to on my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk. The timeline doesn't use mainstream's timeframes because they are wrong. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that I show mainstream admitting their dates are wrong on so many things. For crying out loud, they even have the dates of the mummies wrong in Egypt. They have now pushed them back a whopping 1,000 years. So if you are interested in the world's best, more correct timeline of a vast number of events in our past, you should really check it out.
You could be thinking, hang on a minute. What if these ancient texts are wrong? What if it was a lucky guess that they talked about genetics and creating species? What if they made up the planets and by luck they were right? Well, I have covered this in a 3-hour documentary I made called The Lost Book of Our True History. Here is a snippet of that video.
We need to look at whether or not they are actually real characters. It's all well and good saying that they're son of kings and this, that and the other. There's some people out there that believe that the texts are just a comic book. In other words, if in 100 years' time or 1,000 years' time someone looked back and found Harry Potter, would they believe that Harry Potter books actually meant that there was someone alive at that point? So we need to now rule out that they're actually not just comic book characters, but they are actually real. So here we've got the Stanford Library's website, and it shows you here there are far more tablets in existence than I could have imagined. This is a person writing this for Stanford University. In fact, between 500,000 and 2 million cuneiform tablets are estimated to have been excavated in modern times by the Anunnaki. So then you've got to ask yourself, okay, well, is there any evidence that other than just texts that Enki and Enlil were alive? So here is the British Museum, and they actually have cylinder seals where they've, again, these are images, which I'll just show you here, images of various people, Enlil, Enki, and so on. And over here on the left-hand side, it says named on the inscription, Enki. So let's just go through some of these, there's loads. And another one here, another cylinder seal, and lo and behold, it's got Enki. And again, Enki, and another cylinder seal. So let's just say if this was a storybook that was written over 3,000 years up and down the whole of the Middle East, by people that probably couldn't read or write, there was only a handful of people that could read or write back then. So for them to write about Enki and then get people to carve these tiny, this is tiny, this is only about 1 inch or 2, this cylinder seal. And obviously this is what a tablet would look like. And again, this one's talking about, wait for it, Enki. Another one, you get the idea. Now, this is an actual carving of Enki. So you'll see the turban-style hat that he wore, so you can differentiate between Enlil, King Anu. So this is Enki with his long beard, and the bits in there are lapis lazuli. So they did themselves up with little bits of lapis lazuli to give it a braided appearance. But when they first came here, they had long hair and didn't braid it until they got here. And there's another carving of Enki, again genuine. Now this one's Enlil, talking about Enlil, this tablet. So obviously the brothers, there has to be Enlil as well. And here's Enki again. This one's in a museum. So this is an actual carving of Enki again. You can tell by the turban style hat. A project that was funded by the European Union. So this is looking at basically Enki's and Enlil's and whatever happened back in the Middle East. So this project looks at the temple. There was a temple that was made for Enki and one for Enlil. Both of them got unfortunately destroyed. You know, this whole project that they're doing for the European Union, would they, if they thought this was any way remotely to do with a storybook, would they spend so much time on writing about the size of the actual temple? The temple was a rectangle measuring 41 metres long by 23 metres in a single structure composed of a courtyard, sanctuary and 19 rooms and narrow chambers.
You can see the full 3-hour video from my website. Ask yourself this question: if we never had the Bible, never had any ancient tablets, never had any ancient mysteries like the pyramids, would we have made up a story about gods? No, we would have no reference for a god. None. We certainly wouldn't have pretended a god created us and then made temples for a fake entity. I say this because around the world there are cultures that talk about gods. Did they make them up? No. We know the Anunnaki traveled around the world, and that's why we have many places that talk about gods from the sky or heaven. Remember, heaven is space. Here are just some of them: Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Norse, Hindu, Chinese, Mayan, Incan, Aztec, Polynesian, including Maori, Japanese, Shinto. I have already covered and solved the Norse gods in a deep dive video documentary where I prove with evidence who some of the Norse gods were as Anunnaki. Over time, I'll be doing deep dive videos on the Greeks, Roman, Indian, Chinese, Mayan, and Egyptian. These videos will one show with evidence who the gods were as Anunnaki. Follow me or subscribe to keep up to date.
Did you know the Anunnaki were the first to show mermaids in carvings? In fact, a mermaid is not half human, it's half Anunnaki and half fish. If you want to find out more about this. Yes, you know I've already done a long video covering the evidence for this. The Nazca lines are from the Anunnaki. They were there mining for gold. This was after the flood. The actual mountain range that has the top completely sliced off is roughly 3.7 miles, 6 kilometers. The holes that are on the top are from the machine they used. There is gold in Nazca. The Great Flood, tsunami, broke part of the mountain off which revealed the gold. Don't hate me for saying this next part. I'm really proud of my research. But yes, I'm the only one to work all these things out, and you can see the evidence in my videos. Göbekli Tepe was a silo for grain and animals, built with a roof on the top that got smashed off when the tsunami covered the land. No, Göbekli Tepe was not covered over deliberately by anyone. It was covered just like the buildings in the Middle East that are only just being uncovered now. Because of the Great Flood, remember to go watch my documentary on the Great Flood. I'm going to look at some of the main gods. The first one is Inanna, daughter of Nanna and Ningal, granddaughter of Enlil. Her story is well worth knowing. Inanna, also known as Ishtar in Akkadian, was a prominent goddess associated with love, beauty, sex, fertility, war, justice, and political power. One of the most captivating stories about Inanna revolves around her relationship with Dumuzi, also known as Tammuz, her beloved. Dumuzi was a shepherd god and represented the force of life and fertility. Here is the actual Anunnaki language. Yes, you will now hear the alien language. We know this, because what you are about to hear is a love poem in Inanna's own words, the person talking. I hope you enjoyed this video. The extended version is on patreon.com. Search Our True History. Remember, you can see all the other documentaries also. Just visit ourtruehistory.co.uk. Thank you for watching. Welcome to another amazing documentary, Alien Bible with Evidence. I get asked a lot about the Bible because people don't understand it. I know why, and for me I can see it clear as day, but I have been researching 40 plus years. The Bible is a collection of stories from older times mostly. There are events in the Bible, such as Jesus, that is not copied from older texts. But for this documentary, I'll go through the older stuff. Sadly, the Bible, when copying the older texts, didn't have all the dates correct. This means they mixed and matched what they thought was going on at the time. This is where all the problems start. As far as I know, this will be the only time anyone has actually corrected the Bible. This is the video you can tell your friends about, the video that changed history. There are many versions of the Bible, all of them changed by man. So we will use the Bible that is the closest to the Hebrew Bible. This Bible is called Young's Literal Bible. I'm going to be talking a lot about the alien race called Gods. You might know their name here on Earth, Anunnaki. If you're unsure who they are or want to see evidence they are the gods in the Bible, simply visit my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk, and scroll down on the home page until you see "Click here, watch that video."
If you are new to our True History videos, he has been doing this for over 40 years and is the foremost expert. Feel free to watch his videos. He has solved with evidence many of the mysteries you thought would never be solved. ourtruehistory.co.uk.
In the Young's Literal Bible, the very first line is, "In the beginning of God's preparing the heavens and the earth." I know you're thinking, no, it was God creating heaven and earth. No, it was actually in the beginning of God's preparing the heavens and the earth. This is around 4.6 billion years ago. I'll read parts of the Bible then with evidence. I'll show what it means. In the beginning of God's preparing the heavens and the earth. 2. The earth hath existed waste and void, and darkness is on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God fluttering on the face of the waters. 3. And God saith, Let light be, and light is. Everyone thinks that means God created the heaven and earth. No, it doesn't even mean the Anunnaki created heaven and earth, nor does it mean the Anunnaki gods were preparing earth. What it does mean is the empty void in space was there before any planets. The gods preparing are the planets. The Anunnaki texts refer to the planets as gods, just like their own race name. The Anunnaki gods describe the planets as alive with feelings and thoughts. How can I be so sure? Simple, here in the British Museum are the tablets we call Enuma Elish, the Epic of Creation, translated by L.W. King. In the Eridu Genesis translations, in the beginning there was only Namu, the primeval sea. The Eridu Genesis is the tablet with the oldest known story, along with the Enuma Elish. But how can I say that the stories are the same? The Young's Bible says, "In the beginning of God's preparing the heavens and the earth." And yet I'm saying, in the beginning there was only Namu, the primeval sea. It's because the Young's Bible is setting up the scene, an empty void, preparing for the arrival of gods. I can prove this. The very next wording in the Young's Bible is, "The earth hath existed waste and void, and darkness is on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God fluttering on the face of the waters." Now look at Eridu Genesis, or the Enuma Elish, or even the Norse story. They all say there was a void with water. At this point there was no sun, so the water would have been ice. Norse, "In the beginning there was only Ginnungagap, the great primordial void." To the north of Ginnungagap lay the icy realm of Niflheim, filled with freezing rivers and glaciers. Eridu Genesis. In the beginning, there was only Namu, the primeval sea, Enuma Elish, when in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name, and the primeval Apsu. I believe Apsu was the sun. Bear with me, you'll get all the answers. I just need to break it down one by one. Apsu, the sun, could have been made of heavy water. That is a form of water where the hydrogen atoms are replaced with deuterium, an isotope of hydrogen with 1 proton and 1 neutron. Heavy water is less common but can be found in space. Let's read the texts again. Sorry, I know I keep going back to them, but it's easier for us to understand. From the Enuma Elish, when in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name, and the primeval Apsu, who begat them, and Chaos, Tiamat, the mother of them both, their waters were mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh was to be seen. When of the gods none had been called into being, I'll show they called planets gods a bit later. Young's Bible, the earth hath existed waste and void, and darkness is on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God fluttering on the face of the waters. So both of them agree there was waters in the void, we know now as heaven. Back to the Enuma Elish. To Tien above the heaven was not named, and beneath the earth bore no name, and the primeval Apsu, who begat them, and Mumu and Tiamat, the mother of them all, their waters were mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh seen, when no one of the gods had been called into being, and none bore a name, and no destinies were fixed. Then were created the gods in the midst of heaven, Lakmu and Lakamu were called into being. Ages increased. Can you see the waters mingled together to create something? Tiamat was an ice planet, and Mumu was waters. Their waters mingled together to create what? Then were created the gods in the midst of heaven, Lakmu and Lakamu were called into being. Lakmu and Lakamu were Mars and Venus. Let's read from the first tablet in the Morahen collection about Mars. This will prove we are talking about gods as planets, way before the Anunnaki were in our solar system. We will hear about Enki and 49 other Anunnaki gods as they travel in their craft towards Earth, but they had used too much water, pushing the asteroids out of the way to get past the asteroid belt, so they needed more water. The next planet they could see was Mars, Lamu.
Amid Anzu's excitement, the alert went off. For the way to having fashioned, excessive waters were eaten. Waters were insufficient to keep the chariot's flaming stones hydrated for the rest of the journey. They could see the sun's rays reflected in the sixth planet's profound darkness. He was asking for Anzu. Enki is assisting Lamu, who has water. Do you want to ride the clown chariot over there? Anzu, the chariot, maneuvered it deftly toward Lamu, reaching the celestial god and forming a circle around it. Anzu believes that the planet's attraction is too easy to handle, and that its network could be more robust.
So far we have a void that had water in. The sun was created from the waters. But what do the other versions of the Bible say about this event? King James Version, KJV, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. New International Version, NIV. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. New American Standard Bible, NASB. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. English Standard Version, ESV. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. New Revised Standard Version, NRSV. The earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. New Living Translation, NLT. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. As you can see, they added and changed things, but they mostly all agree the void had the waters, and from the waters we got the sun and planets, called gods. Young's Bible, and God saith, let light be, and light is. That is the last part before the Bible gets the older stories wrong. Yes, there was a sun. But let me read the rest. 3, and God saith, let light be, and light is. 4, and God seeth the light that it is good, and God separateth between the light and the darkness. 5, and God calleth to the light day, and to the darkness he hath called night. And there is an evening, and there is a morning, day 1. 6, and God saith, let an expanse be in the midst of the waters, and let it be separating between waters and waters. 7, and God maketh the expanse, and it separateth between the waters which are under the expanse, and the waters which are above the expanse. And it is so. 8, and God calleth to the expanse heavens, and there is an evening, and there is a morning, day 2. If I may just break this down to show you the Bible has taken the start of our solar system, some 4.6 billion years ago, then added stories from just 450,000 years ago, I'll show you why. This part belongs with the newer stories, not 4.6 billion years ago. 4, and God seeth the light that it is good, and God separateth between the light and the darkness. 5, and God calleth to the light day, and to the darkness he hath called night. And there is an evening, and there is a morning, day 1. Have a listen to the Moorhen tablets. You'll see this part was talking about the Anunnaki when they arrived here on Earth, 4.6 billion later than the forming of the sun and planets.
Their first day on Earth included both an evening and a morning. By daylight, Ea had already considered the occurrences. He was considering how to divide the oceans. Engur fashioned the master from the beautiful waters to provide drinking water. He walked to the snake pond with Alalu, thinking about its warm waters. Nasty snakes were spreading in the pond. Engur informed Ea of this. Ea then reflected on a large amount of rainfall he had collected in the marshlands. He named the reed thicket he was directing and delegated wetland maintenance to Enbilulu. Enkidu, who was in charge of the ditch and dike, constructed a boundary so that the marshes could create a collection area for the rainwater. As a result, marsh waters and pleasant waters were separated from the waters above and below. The second day on Earth occurred between the hours of dusk and dawn.
Let that sink in. Enki separated the waters on the first day. This means the first day was not 4.6 billion years ago. This means the Bible has mixed bits up. Here is what the Bible says is this, Young's Bible. And God saith, let the waters under the heavens be collected unto one place, and let the dry land be seen. And it is so. King James Version, KJV. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. New International Version, NIV. And God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so. New American Standard Bible, NASB. Then God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. English Standard Version, ESV. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. New Living Translation, NLT. Then God said, let the waters beneath the sky flow together into one place, so dry ground may appear. And that is what happened. New Revised Standard Version, NRSV. And God said, let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. Clearly that was day 1, but let me read out day 2. Just so that you know the Bible really had mixed up the Genesis story from the planets forming and Anunnaki arriving on Earth, a difference of around 4.6 billion years. But what does day 2 say in the Bible compared to day 2 in the text from the Anunnaki Gods? Here is day 2 from the tablets that the Rothschilds own, which are in the Columbia University, translated by George Moorhen.
As soon as sundawn was declared, the hero accomplished the chores assigned to him. Alalu Ea's steps were aimed toward the grass and trees area. Herbs and fruits of various kinds grow on everything in the orchard. Ea posed the following inquiries to his vizier Isimud. What exactly is this plant? What exactly is that plant? He was curious. Isimud, a learned man, could tell what food grew well. He ripped a fruit from a honey plant for Ea. In his remarks to Ea, he ate one fruit and Ea ate one fruit. The hero, the guru, is given power over the food that grows due to his excellent reputation. As a result, the hero was given drink and nourishment, but he was unsatisfied.
So on the second day in the tablets that predate the Bible, it looks like Enki was learning and teaching the other gods about plants and trees. This is what Young's literal Bible says about day 2. And God saith, Let the earth yield tender grass, herb sowing seed, fruit tree, whose seed is in itself, making fruit after its kind on the earth. And it is so. And the earth bringeth forth tender grass, herb sowing seed after its kind, and tree making fruit, whose seed is in itself after its kind. And God seeth that it is good. I think you can see where this is going. I'll read one more out, but yeah, they are all the same.
Long before the stories in the Bible, a different tale of creation was etched in the oldest known tablets of humanity. This is our true history. Meet the Anunnaki, the gods who came to Earth from a distant world. They shaped our existence and left their mark on history. Unlike any other children's book, our true history reveals the hidden truths. The Anunnaki's quest for gold in Africa, Enki, the kind-hearted god, defying his brother Enlil to save Noah from the Great Flood, and how Adam and Eve's origins trace back to these celestial beings. Each page is not just a story, but a gateway to evidence. Discover the links and dive into the ancient tablets that predate the Bible, proving these incredible events. Explore Our True History, now available on Amazon. It's time to discover the story that was always meant to be told.
The third day on earth occurred between the hours of dusk and dawn. The winds died down on the fourth day, and the waves had no effect on the chariot, allowing the chariot's tools to be brought and the encampment's dwellings to be built. This was given by Ea. In charge of mold and brickmaking, Kula assigned Ea to make clay bricks and give Mushdamu the order to build foundations and dwellings. The sun shone all day brightly, generating the day's brightness. By sunset, Kingu, one of the heavenly gods, was supposed to represent the earth's moon, which casts a pale light on earth and a lesser light to rule the night when it is complete.
Young's Bible. And God saith, Let luminaries be in the expanse of the heavens, to make a separation between the day and the night. Then they have been for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And they have been for luminaries in the expanse of the heavens, to give light upon the earth. And it is so. And God maketh the two great luminaries, the great luminary for the rule of the day, and the small luminary, and the stars, and for the rule of the night. And God giveth them in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth, and to rule over day and over night, and to make a separation between the light and the darkness. And God seeth that it is good. So far we have the Bible telling us about the start of our solar system, mixed in with the first 7 days of the Anunnaki arriving here on Earth. In the Bible it says man was created on the 6th day. That is not correct. Again, it's mixed it up. Here is what the Bible says about the 6th day, and then what the tablets say. And God saith, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after its kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after its kind. And it is so. And God maketh the beast of the earth after its kind, and the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing of the ground after its kind. And God seeth that it is good. And God saith, Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over fish of the sea, and over fowl of the heavens, and over cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that is creeping on the earth. And God prepareth the man in his image. In the image of God he prepared him, a male and a female he prepared them. And God blesseth them, and God saith to them, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and rule over fish of the sea, and over fowl of the heavens, and over every living thing that is creeping upon the earth. And God saith, Lo, I have given to you every herb sowing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree sowing seed. To you it is for food, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the heavens, and to every creeping thing on the earth, in which is breath of life, every green herb is for food. And it is so. And God seeth all that he hath done, and lo, very good. And there is an evening, and there is a morning. Day the 6th.
On the 6th day, Ea Ningisig gave the order to build a reed boat. It is critical to assess the extent of the swamplands and the distance between the marshes. Ulmarsh, the one who knows what swarms in the oceans and who amid the birds that soar. Enki relied on Ulmarsh to help him distinguish between good and evil. The Ulmarsh were unaware of many creatures that swam in the oceans and take flight in the air. Their sheer numbers were astounding. The carp were large and swimming among the undesirables. Ea summoned Enbilulu, master of the marshlands, Enkimdu, commander of the ditch and dike. He spoke to them in the marshlands to build a barrier. Catching fish with the help of canebrakes and green reeds, a trap for carp that could not escape from a net was set up there. No bird suitable for consumption could escape from its net. For the heroes given, fish and poultry were separated into gorgeous varieties. It was now the morning after the 6th day on earth had ended. On the 6th day, each of the orchard's creatures began keeping score. Enuosag to his task of distinguishing between what creeps and what walks on foot. Their personalities left Enuosag stunned, and he told Ea about the ferocity of their wildness. Mushdamu was summoned by Ea Kula, who issued the following urgent orders. The houses will be completed by the evening, and a fence will surround them for security. The warriors who took up the assignments quickly laid bricks on the foundations. The roofing was made of reeds, while the fencing was made of felled trees. A beam that kills from the chariot carried over a speaker that words beams to the house he made for Ea, Anzu. Everything Ea, Alalu, and Anzu did was positive in light of their acts. The camp was completed by the evening. The heroes gathered for the evening. The 6th day has nighttime and morning hours.
So, where did the Bible get the creation of man from? And why was it stuck in the middle of the Anunnaki create a camp? Remember when the Bible was written, any verbal or tablets didn't have dates on them, so logic would say, put the tablet in where it's also talking about animals, so the animal part was correct, it's just the creation of man. The Anunnaki didn't create man until about 150,000 Earth years later. That's only about 6 to 7 months of their time. How can I prove the Anunnaki didn't suddenly create humans 450,000 years ago when they arrived? First, I need to show they did arrive at that point in time. The Anunnaki called their year a shah. We call our year a year. So one orbit for their home planet was called a shah. In Sumerian, the term Sa, sometimes spelled Shah, in Sumerian mathematics, Sa represents a large unit of measurement. It typically corresponds to a numerical value of 3,660 squared, reflecting the Sumerians' use of a sexagesimal base 60 numbering system. Sexagesimal system. The Sumerians developed a complex numerical system based on 60, which greatly influenced their mathematics and astronomy. The Sayar, as 3,660, was part of this system. Sa appears in various administrative and astronomical records from ancient Mesopotamia. It was used in a broad sense to denote completeness or totality, especially in large-scale computations or descriptions, so we have 3,600 Earth years for one completeness, an orbit. This has been covered in my other videos, please visit. ourtruehistory.co.uk. But how can we say that the Anunnaki gods came here 450,000 Earth years ago? There is some debate about the time. Some claim 450,000, while others have a different time frame. These records were discovered through purposeful excavations in Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, referring to the Tigris and Euphrates in present-day Iraq, around 150 years ago. Clay tablets were unearthed and distributed to major museums worldwide. In 1876, George Smith of the British Museum pieced together broken tablets from the Royal Library of Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, and published the Chaldean Genesis, revealing that the biblical tale of creation was first written in Mesopotamia millennia earlier. The Anunnaki are said to have arrived on Earth 120 SARS, or 432,000 Earth years, before the deluge from Nibiru. An Akkadian text, the mother tongue of the Babylonians, Assyrians, and Hebrews, called Atrahasis, describes in detail the reasons for the Anunnaki's arrival on Earth, primarily for gold mining. For 40 SARS, the Anunnaki were sent to the Abzu, present-day Africa, to mine for gold. The life cycles of the Anunnaki were such that, in human terms, they were practically immortal. Some of the cuneiform writings from Sumerian culture can be seen at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, the Brooklyn Museum in New York, and the British Museum in London. Regardless if it's 450,000 or 432,000, that is not billions of years. So how can I show our solar system was formed 4.6 billion years ago? This age is based on a variety of scientific evidence, including radiometric age dating. The most reliable method for dating the formation of the solar system is radiometric dating of meteorites. These space rocks are considered to be remnants from the early solar system that have remained relatively unchanged. The oldest meteorites, specifically chondrites, have been dated to about 4.56 billion years ago using isotopic dating techniques. Formation of the Sun, which contains more than 99% of the mass in the solar system, is believed to have formed from the gravitational collapse of a region within a large molecular cloud of possible heavy water in a gas form. This collapse led to the formation of a protostar, which eventually ignited nuclear fusion in its core, giving birth to our Sun. Following the formation of the Sun, the remaining material in the protoplanetary disk coalesced to form the planets, moons, asteroids, and other bodies within the solar system. This process took place over a few tens of millions of years. Rocks brought back from the Moon by the Apollo missions have been dated to around 4.5 billion years, providing further evidence for the age of the solar system. There we have it. Now I just need to prove the Anunnaki were here for a long time before creating humans. In the tablets in the British Museum called Atrahasis, we have the story of the Igigi, the young gods, sons of gods you might know them as from the Bible. The story is very clear. The Igigi were here working for a long time, longer than the 5 days it says in the Bible, because the Igigi were working hard mining. They complained and the result was Enki creating man. This is clearly a long time after the 5 days, meaning on the 6th day man was not created, and the Bible added it just like I said. Here is the translation. Made the Igigi bear the workload. The gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The Igigi had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris River, bed, and then dug out the Euphrates. In the deep, they set up there the Apsu of the land, inside it, raised its top. Of all the mountains, they were counting the years of loads. The great marsh, they were counting the years of loads. For 3 full years they bore the excess. Hard work, night and day. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. Let us confront the Chamberlain, and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry the Lord, the Counselor of Gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Come, let us carry Elil, the counselor of gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Then Aaliyah made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers, gap of about 8 lines. Come, let us carry the counselor of gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Come, let us carry Elil, the counselor of gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Now, cry battle. Let us mix fight with battle. The gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire, their loads for the fire god. They flared up. When they reached the gate of warrior Elil's dwelling, as you can see, they even say they worked for 3,600 years. Remember, this is not 3,600 directly after they arrived. This is 3,600 years after they started mining in South Africa. There was a period before the Igigi even arrived on Earth. So let's read the part in the same Atrahasis where Enki comes up with the idea to create man to help the Igigi in the mines. Remember, you are listening to a race that is talking about genetically modifying a hominid species at a time when only a handful of people could read or write. Who is in charge of the rabble? Who is in charge of the fighting? Which god started the war? A rabble was running around Elil's door. Gap of uncertain length. SBV, Ea made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are we blaming them? Their work was too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. There is Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create primeval man, so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Gap. Obi. Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let the womb goddess create offspring, and let man bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess, asked the midwife of the gods, wise mummy, you are the womb goddess, to be the creator of mankind. Create primeval man, that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. It is not proper for me to make him. The work is Enki's. He makes everything pure. If he gives me clay, then I will do it. I would suggest everyone read the full texts, but clearly we can see this event that sparked the idea to create man was not done after 5 days.
Let's have some fun. What does the Bible say about the 7th day, the day that we all rest? Because an almighty God got tired, or did he? I've proven in this and other videos, the Anunnaki were the gods in the Bible. So let's look at the 7th day from the Bible, then the tablets translated the Moora Hens, Young's literal Bible. And God completeth by the 7th day his work which he hath made, and ceaseth by the 7th day from all his work which he hath made. And God blesseth the 7th day, and sanctifieth it, for in it he hath ceased from all his work which God had prepared for making. These are births of the heavens and of the earth in their being prepared, in the day of Jehovah God's making earth and heavens. And now the Moorhen translations.
On the 7th day, the heroes of the encampment gathered. They overheard Ea declare to them, We have taken a risky, dangerous road from Nibiru to the 7th planet. We landed on Earth, did much good, and established an encampment. Today should be a day of relaxation, and the 7th day should always be a day of rest. The phrase Eridu should now be replaced with home in the far away, which means the same thing.
To sum up, the Bible has mixed the creation of our solar system with the first 7 days the Anunnaki were here on Earth. The Bible also added the creation of man, which didn't happen until way later. If you are interested, I'll be going through the Bible and straightening it out so everyone can understand the time frames, etc. For example, I've already done a documentary on the Book of Revelations where I show The events have already happened. In fact, I've got over 1,000 video documentaries made by myself using my own research. If you want to see any of them, please visit ourtruehistory.co.uk. Thank you for your support. Our True History.
You might want to share this. Anunnaki Gods versus the Bible God from ourtruehistory.co.uk. Anunnaki. The Anunnaki, a group of Sumerian gods, are considered as gods on earth, God of Israel. Yep, God. Anunnaki. The Sumerian gods inscribed their stories on tablets. The Bible is a record derived from those ancient tablets. Anunnaki. Sumerian gods like Enlil and Enki are depicted as immortal beings. God in the Bible. The God of the Bible is also portrayed as eternal and immortal. Enlil, a prominent deity in Sumerian mythology, is described as having a throne made of lapis lazuli. God in the Bible. In the book of Exodus, God is described as sitting on a throne of lapis lazuli. Exodus 24:10. Enlil is often referred to as the highest among the gods. God in the Bible. The God of the Bible is frequently referred to as the Most High, e.g. Psalm 83:18. Enlil allowed the flood to happen to destroy humanity. God in the Bible. In the Genesis account, God caused the flood to cleanse the world of human wickedness, Genesis 6:5-7. Enki, another Sumerian god, warned Ziusudra, or Utnapishtim, about the impending flood, enabling him to build a boat and survive. God in the Bible. God warned Noah about the flood and instructed him to build an ark to save himself, his family, and pairs of animals, Genesis 6:13-22. Anunnaki. Enki is credited with creating humans from clay in Sumerian texts. God in the Bible. In the Bible, God creates the first human, Adam, Adamu, from the dust of the ground, Genesis 2:7. Anunnaki. The Sumerian gods often convene in a council to make decisions, such as the decision to send the flood. God in the Bible. The Bible also depicts a divine council or assembly of heavenly beings, e.g. Psalm 82:1. Anunnaki. Centered in Mesopotamia. God of Israel. The Israelites were neighbors to Mesopotamian civilizations, with cultural and trade interactions between these regions. Yahweh. Yahweh has been providing evidence that he was Marduk, the Anunnaki. Anunnaki. The Sumerian gods, particularly Enlil, are associated with the sacred mountain Ekur. God in the Bible. God is often associated with sacred mountains, such as Mount Sinai, Exodus 19, and Mount Zion, Psalm 48:2. Anunnaki. Enki told Adapa, Adam, not to eat from the tree. Bible. And the Lord God commanded him, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it you will certainly die." Genesis 2:16-17. Anunnaki. The gods are immortal, and their demigod humans initially have longer lifespans, but are not immortal. God in the Bible. Humans in early biblical texts also have longer lifespans, e.g. Methuselah living 969 years, but are not immortal, Genesis 5:27. Anunnaki. The gods have an underworld, with stories of descent, such as Inanna's descent into the netherworld. God in the Bible. The Bible references Sheol, a place where the dead reside, and includes narratives about descent, e.g. Jonah's prayer from the depths, Jesus' reference to Jonah, and Jesus' own descent after crucifixion. Anunnaki. The gods make promises and covenants with humans, such as the promise of longevity or protection. God in the Bible. God makes several covenants with humans, including the covenant with Noah to never again flood the earth. Genesis 9:8-17. Anunnaki. The gods communicate with humans through intermediaries or lesser gods. God in the Bible. God often communicates through angels or prophets. Anunnaki. Temples like the ziggurats were built as dwelling places for the gods. God in the Bible, the tabernacle, and later the temple in Jerusalem are described as God's dwelling places among the people. Exodus 25:8-9, 1 Kings 6. Anunnaki. Anunnaki were said to look like humans but were taller, 8-12 feet tall, with pale skin, blonde hair, white beards, and blue eyes. God of the Bible is often shown as pale skin, white hair and beard, and blue eyes, as in the painting called The Creation of Adam by Michelangelo.
I show evidence to all of this in documentaries on my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk.
Anunnaki. In Sumerian texts, the gods often employed divine messengers, who are similar to angels. The Hebrew word for angels, malach, means messenger. These messengers carried out tasks and delivered messages between the gods and humans. Biblical angels. In the Hebrew Bible, angels, from the Hebrew malach, meaning messenger, serve as divine emissaries who communicate God's will to humans. They are seen delivering messages, offering protection, and executing God's judgment, e.g., Gabriel in Daniel 8:16 and Michael in Daniel 10:13. Anunnaki. The word Elohim in Hebrew is the plural form of El, a generic term for God. In many ancient Semitic languages, Elohim can be understood as gods. Bible. Let us make man in our image. Genesis 1:26 says, Then God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Anunnaki. Descriptions of brilliant weapons causing intense fires and leaving the land desolate. Bible. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah with fire and brimstone raining from the heavens. Genesis 19:24-28. Anunnaki. Post-catastrophe descriptions where land and water are left desolate and poisoned, possibly by weapons of terror. Bible. The wormwood star causing waters to become bitter, leading to many deaths. Revelation 8:10-11. Anunnaki. Descriptions of cities left in ruins, people suffering from strange sicknesses, and the aftermath of divine weapons. Bible. Descriptions of flesh rotting and eyes bleeding due to divine judgment. Zechariah 14:12. Anunnaki Igigi. The Igigi gods, tired of their labor, were involved in stories where they interacted with humans, which included mating with human women. Bible. The sons of God, interpreted by some as angels or divine beings, took human wives and had offspring with them, leading to the birth of the Nephilim. Genesis 6:4. Anunnaki. Enki was called the Great Lord. King of Kings. God is often referred to as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Deuteronomy 10:17, Psalm 136:3, 1 Timothy 6:15, Revelation 19:16. These titles emphasize God's supreme authority over all other powers and rulers. Anunnaki. The first place they set up was called Eridu, and they were involved in creating the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Bible. Genesis describes events happening in the region of Mesopotamia, believed by some to be near Eridu. Anunnaki. The main god Enlil had a wife called Ninlil. Bible. In ancient times, some Near Eastern religions depicted their gods with divine consorts or wives. Anunnaki. Marduk is mentioned in the Cyrus cylinder tablet. Marduk's influence grew, leading to him ordering Cyrus to march on Babylon, which he entered peacefully. This event is reflected in the Bible's prophecy in Isaiah 44:28-45, foretelling Cyrus as a liberator chosen by God. Bible. God's decree. In the Bible, particularly in the book of Isaiah, there is a prophecy, Isaiah 44:28-45, that foretells the rise of Cyrus as a liberator chosen by God. At the time, Marduk had become highly influential, possibly influencing biblical references to him as a significant figure.
I show evidence to all of this in documentaries on my website, ourtruehistory.co.uk.
I was going to show clips of other people's videos where they quote the Bible and say things like God created the heaven and earth. But again, sadly, these people don't bother to research and are happy to believe in the Bible. First of all, if you have watched my documentary called The Lost Book of Our True History, you'll see the Anunnaki were the gods in the Bible, and that is a proven fact. This means I won't do what those other people do and start from the position of an almighty being, because there was none that the Bible mentions. It was the Anunnaki. If we even want to look at the Bible just to see what it says about the word firmament, we need to look at Young's literal version and nothing else. Young's literal translation, YLT, of the Bible is a translation that aims to be as close to the original Hebrew and Greek texts as possible, preserving the literal structure and word-for-word correspondence as much as feasible in English. It was translated by Robert Young in the late 19th century and is known for its strict adherence to literal accuracy and its avoidance of interpretation or paraphrasing. In the case of Genesis 1:1, which is the opening verse of the Bible, Young's literal translation renders it as follows: "In the beginning of God's preparing the heavens and the earth." Compare this to the more commonly known translations, such as the New International Version, NIV. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. As you can see, there's a huge difference between God's preparing and God creating. This means the people that talk about the firmament from the Bible are using the changed versions. Let's be clear here. The word firmament is a word the Anunnaki used many times. However, the modern dictionary takes the word firmament from the Bible, which is newer than the Anunnaki texts, and thus the dictionary is already starting from an error. But here in the dictionary is the meaning of firmament based of the Bible and not the ancient texts that the Bible copied. Firmament. Fee, mum, h, ant, noun literary. Noun. Firmament. Plural. Noun. Firmaments, the heavens or sky. Thunder shakes the firmament. Middle English, via Old French from Latin firmamentum, from firmary, fix, settle. So even from the dictionary, no one should be saying we have an impenetrable dome over Earth. So let's look at what people use to believe in a dome. As I quote the Bible, you'll see how they are changed in the different versions. In the Bible, the term firmament appears specifically in Genesis 1:6-8 in the King James Version, KJV. However, in other translations like the New International Version, NIV, and the English Standard Version, ESV, the word firmament is not used. Instead, they use vault and expanse, respectively, to translate the same Hebrew word. So, in terms of the exact word firmament, it only appears in Genesis 1:6-8 in the KJV. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. Genesis 1:6-8, New International Version, NIV. And God said, "Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. Genesis 1:6-8, English Standard Version, ESV. And God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day. The Young's Literal Bible says this, Genesis 1:6-8, Young's Literal Translation. And God saith, "Let an expanse be in the midst of the waters, and let it be separating between waters and waters. And God maketh the expanse, and it separateth between the waters which are under the expanse, and the waters which are above the expanse, and it is so. And God calleth to the expanse heavens, and there is an evening, and there is a morning, day second."
Did anyone see where it mentioned an impenetrable, invisible dome over Earth? No, that's because it didn't say that. It said, in the expanse to separate the waters, nothing to do with a dome. But I'll show you the evidence later of what it was talking about.
What the original Bible has done is taken ancient texts and tried to put them in an order. For example, in examining ancient texts such as the Bible and the Sumerian Eridu Genesis, intriguing disparities emerge regarding the origin and creation of humanity. The Bible, revered by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, presents a creation narrative in the book of Genesis, where humans, Adam and Eve, are fashioned by God on the sixth day of creation. This account forms a cornerstone of Abrahamic faiths, conveying theological truths about the divine origin of humanity and its relationship with the Creator. In contrast, the Sumerian Eridu Genesis offers a distinctly different perspective. Originating from ancient Mesopotamia, this text recounts how the gods Enki and Ninmah created humanity after a prolonged.
To watch the full long documentary and see how the firmament is proven to be something else other than a solid dome, please visit ourtruehistory.co.uk. You'll find over 1,000 videos that answer the many mysteries that you thought will never be solved. Heaven and Hell Solved.
If you are new to our True History videos, he has been doing this for over 40 years and is the foremost expert. Feel free to watch his videos. He has solved with evidence many of the mysteries you thought would never be solved. ourtruehistory.co.uk.
Good old heaven, up there. Even if you are in Australia, it's still up. Why do you think we look up to heaven? Simple answer is because the gods went up to heaven, as it says in ancient texts. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, we need to work out why people even mention the word heaven. It's because it's in the Bible. Yes, it's in older texts, but so is the great Lord Enki, but none of us pray to him. So we use the word from the Bible. Here is what heaven means in the Oxford Dictionary: a place regarded in various religions as the abode of God, or the gods, and the angels, and of the good after death, often traditionally depicted as being above the sky. Literary. The sky, especially perceived as a vault in which the sun, moon, stars, and planets are situated. Isn't that funny? The dictionary actually tells us what it is. It is space, but I'll get to the evidence soon. I know in space I can see the sun, moon, and stars, but I can't see heaven. The dictionary agrees it's space, vault, in which the sun, moon, stars, and planets are situated. So why do we believe it's a place for dead people? I'll get to that later on. Let's look at some passages from the Young's Literal Bible. That is the only Bible you need to read. Any others have been changed. See my other videos for evidence of that.
Revelation 21. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth did pass away, and the sea is not any more. 2. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of the heaven, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. 3. And I heard a great voice out of the heaven, saying, Lo, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will tabernacle with them. And they shall be his peoples, and God himself shall be with them, their God. 4. And God shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and the death shall not be any more, nor sorrow, nor crying, nor shall there be any more pain, because the first things did go away. 5. And he who is sitting upon the throne said, Lo, new I make all things. And he saith to me, Write, because these words are true and steadfast. 6. And he said to me, It hath been done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I to him who is thirsting will give of the fountain of the water of the life freely. Let's break this down. John could see a new heaven and a new earth. The first heaven and earth passes away, and so does the sea. If John was on a spaceship in heaven, space, then as the planet turned, the earth would have gone then sea, then back to earth. But the next bit is interesting. It says, I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of the heaven. I have no doubt John had just been with God, Anunnaki, in space, and is now coming down to earth. I'll read it again. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of the heaven. That's clearly two parts. It even has lines to break it up. He sees New Jerusalem. Then a short while later, the craft he is in descends down. That's why it then says, coming down from God out of the heaven. That was a start of a new passage. Again, while in the spaceship on the way down to Earth, a voice comes over the radio.
This was just part of the full long documentary. To watch the full version, visit ourtruehistory.co.uk. Welcome to another special video from Our True History, which is me. Who was Jesus and who was his dad? I'm going from the premise that there is no almighty being that the Bible was talking about. If you watch my videos called The Lost Book of Our True History, you'll see that the Anunnaki were proven to be the gods that was referred to in the Bible. So let's break this down. Who would have been around at the time to be his dad? Would the dad have had the power to take Mary up to space? Heaven. Proven that it was space, see my other videos. If he is a god, then were there any other gods? Because of monotheism, one true God, as Jesus was trying to say. Did the dad do this before? Was there another time that he tried to prove that he was the one true God? If there were other gods around, why weren't they the father of Jesus? I've been researching for 40 plus years. I'm the only person to have stated with evidence who the Atlanteans were. I've even proved where Atlantis was. I'm the only person that's connected the Book of Enoch with Stonehenge. I'm the only person to give hours worth of proof on video that God was really the Anunnaki. I'm the only one that has worked out that the Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about light energy beings and the Jinn. There are so many world firsts that I've discovered, and most importantly, not one person has debunked me. This is just my research. If you feel I'm wrong and have evidence to prove I'm wrong, please let me know. Please don't just type BS or that I'm stupid, because that means you don't have the evidence, and in your heart you know that I'm right. So, enough self-praise for myself, let's get on. You can watch the documentaries I've just mentioned here on TikTok on the Series button, click below, or on my Patreon page. First we need to look at the Bible because there are no Anunnaki texts that mention Jesus. That is because while the Sumerian as a spoken language gradually declined and was eventually replaced by Akkadian and other languages, the use of Sumerian written in text continued to approximately the end of the 3rd millennium BCE. After that period, Sumerian text became increasingly rare and other languages took prominence in written records. The 3rd millennium BCE was before the birth of Jesus Christ. Jesus is believed to have been born around 4 to 6 BCE. So the 3rd millennium BCE predates his birth by several thousand years.
1. Who would be around at that time to be his dad?
As proven in my previous video, the Anunnaki Gods is their race name, were here and were from a planet called Nibiru or Nibiru. They were called gods, and rightly so. That's their race name. God, gods, human, humans. They also called themselves lords, and the great lord was Enki. He was the one that created man, Homo sapiens. You may know him as our Father who art in heaven. But as proved, heaven is space, so that shows Enki came from space. You're probably thinking Enki is Jesus' dad. No. The original gods, such as Enlil, Enki, Nimna, etc., died out a long time before Jesus. In the Epic of Gilgamesh it talks about the gods of old, about a time long ago that the gods caused the flood.
The gods were frightened by the flood and retreated, ascending to the heaven of Anu. The gods were cowering like dogs, crouching by the outer wall. Ishtar shrieked like a woman in childbirth. The sweet-voiced mistress of the gods wailed, "The olden days have alas turned to clay, because I said evil things in the assembly of the gods. How could I say evil things in the assembly of the gods, ordering a catastrophe to destroy my people? No sooner have I given birth to my dear people than they fill the sea like so many fish." The gods, those of the Anunnaki, were weeping with her. The gods humbly sat weeping, sobbing with grief, their lips burning, parched with thirst. 6 days and 7 nights came the wind and flood, the storm flattening the land.
Marduk was the son of Enki, and was also the person in the tablets of the Ulish, which are in the British Museum. The hero of that story has Marduk destroying another planet called Tiamat. But we know that Marduk wasn't born at that point because part of the planet called Tiamat that got smashed up formed Earth. My calculations say the Ulish was written about 5,000 years ago. That would put it around the time that some people believe the Earth was formed, but really it was when the tablets in the story of Marduk spread, the creation story. Marduk was banished at one point and even chased out of Babylon by Enlil, which was his uncle, and Ishtar, who was Enlil's granddaughter, also known as Inanna. He went to Scandinavia, where he became known as Thor, and his father was Odin. You'll notice that the Anunnaki changed their names a lot. That's understandable when they were here for over 400,000 years. So a bit of context, Ninurta was the son of Enlil. Now Enlil was the first main god. He was the wrathful god in the Bible. He was also the god in the Bible that was the god of Israel, which is quite interesting because obviously you can't have a god of Israel if you're the god of everything. So that's why the Bible talks about the god of Israel. They're talking about Enlil. If you watch my previous videos, you'll see that I've done a video documentary on the 10 plagues of Egypt, which Enlil actually caused. Enlil's 10 plagues, as they were called, wasn't actually done in Egypt, even though we know them as the 10 plagues of Egypt. They were actually done over in Israel. But the aftermath the Egyptians got, and they were the ones that wrote it down. Ninurta, the son of Enlil, who was the first main god, would have been next in line to follow Enlil as leader. Even though Enki, Enlil's half-brother, was born first, but he was born to a concubine and not the king's wife. But Enlil was born to the king's wife. This means Enki's son would never become ruler. That did change for a few long reasons that I won't go into here, but the main reason is that because the gods, Anunnaki, aged faster here, Enlil would have died on Earth, but that means King Anu would have needed Enlil's son, Ninurta, to come back to their planet Nibiru to take over from King Anu when the time came. Enlil and his son Ninurta allowed Marduk to be the leader of Earth just before Enlil died. But Ninurta, the son of Enlil, before he went back to Nibiru to take charge, set up a place that we know as the Vatican. This was so that when he came back he would have a place to stay and for his followers to worship him when he came back. In Greek times Ninurta was known as Ares, and in Roman times he was called Mars.
1. Who would be around at that time to be his dad? Answer. Anunnaki, race name gods. Would the dad have the power to take Mary up to heaven?
Did they fly? Eric von Daniken wrote a best-selling book called Chariots of the Gods in 1968. The book was one of the first to suggest that aliens had something to do with our past. The word chariot is something we would expect to be pulled by horses, and they did have horse-pulled chariots in ancient times. However, just like the word vehicle, it can have a few different meanings. A vehicle can be a car, a truck, or even a chariot. But yet a chariot is pulled by horses in ancient times, so can it also be the name for a spacecraft that goes in the heaven, which should be the word space. Here is some ancient texts that suggest they did indeed fly. Ninurta's return to Nibru, Asir Gita to Ninurta, C1, 6.1. Let my father therefore bring in my battle trophies and weapons for me. Let Enlil bathe my heroic arms. Let him pour holy water on the fierce arms which bore my weapons. Let him set up a holy dais in the throne room for me. Let him set my heavenly chariot upon a pedestal. Let him tether my captured warriors there like budding bulls. Let him have my captured kings make obeisance to me there as to the light of heaven. Why call his chariot heavenly? I've never called my car heavenly. There was a few descriptions of their crafts. One was called a whirlwind. Zechariah Sitchin describes it like a 1 or 2 person helicopter. Here is a passage from the Bible talking about the same thing. Other translations of 2 Kings 2. 1. 12 King James Version. And it came to pass, when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. Here is another line from the same texts. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. It appears in that passage they mentioned the whirlwind 12 times. There's a strong possibility that the whirlwind flying machine was actually carved for us to see in Egypt. This is above a door in Abydos and shows what look like many different futuristic machines. Have a listen to this, about hovering over someone from Sumerian texts. Lugalbanda in the mountain cave, C1.8.2.1 a second time, that is at the following sunrise. As the bright bull rising up from the horizon, the bull resting among the cypresses, a shield standing on the ground, watched by the assembly, a shield coming out from the treasury, watched by the young men, the youth UTU extended his holy splendor down from heaven. 1 MS from Urim adds, Holy, his brilliance illuminated for him the mountain cave. He bestowed them on holy Lugalbanda in the mountain cave. His good protective god hovered ahead of him. His good protective goddess walked behind him. The god which had smitten him stepped aside. 1 MS has instead, went out from him. 1 MS has instead, went up and away from him. When he raised his eyes heavenward to UTU, he wept to him as to his own father. In the mountain cave he raised to him his fair hands. The Anunnaki used large machines to move the gold they needed. They would take it to Mars, which has the young Anunnaki on there. These are the Agigi, which means eyes in the sky, the watchers who deflower.
Would the dad have the power to take Mary up to heaven? Answer: Anunnaki, race name gods. 3. If he is a god, then were there any other god? Because of monotheism. One true God. The Bible portrays Jesus within the context of monotheism, specifically in relation to the belief in one God. Christianity, which is based on the teachings of Jesus as recorded in the Bible, adheres to monotheism. In the New Testament, Jesus is depicted as affirming and upholding the belief in one God. He often refers to God as Father and teaches about the unity and oneness of God. For example, in Mark chapter 12 verse 29, Jesus responds to a question about the greatest commandment by saying, "The most important one is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Additionally, the Gospel of John emphasizes Jesus' connection to God while maintaining the monotheistic belief. Overall, the Bible, particularly in the teachings of Jesus, reinforces the concept of monotheism, emphasizing the belief in one God.
So why would Jesus' father want Jesus to go around and say there was only one God, when really we know the Anunnaki, race name gods, were many? That's because although Enki, our Father who art in heaven, did create the Homo sapiens, that's why we have two fused chromosomes, number 23 and number 24. Jesus' dad was the father of Jesus, but it wasn't Enki. Marduk, who I believe was Jesus' father, would have been rightful heir to the planet Earth. He also has a track record of trying to push out other gods. See number 4.
4. Did the dad do this before? Marduk was in charge at one point of ancient Egypt. He was known as Ra, but after the flood he was called Amun-Ra. Amun, which represents the next god in the Egyptian Ogdod, means hidden of name, heaven, or sun. Ra, the sun god as we know him. His father's name in Egypt was Ptah. Just like Enki is also credited for, the animals and humans of Earth were created on the potter's wheel of Kechenem, so we know only one could have created the humans and strange hybrid creatures, myths as you call them, but fact I would say as I've proved on other videos. The sun god later he became known as Aten. Also a sun god, it was at this point that Marduk, Amun-Ra, had to leave Egypt because Enlil and Inanna were after him again. But when that all cleared up, the reason why he came back to Egypt after leaving was because the other pharaohs had removed Amun-Ra as god and started to worship other gods and inserted his own pharaohs back in there. This time he had asked his dad for help and they created a new type of human, one that was fused with part of a grey alien. The Greys had started to visit Earth at the time Marduk went to Scandinavia and became Thor. The myth says that Thor went to Svartalfheim, the cavernous home of the dwarves. The dwarves made him a special weapon. We know there were human dwarves back then and that the Anunnaki called humans little people. But neither the little people, humans, nor the human dwarves could have had the technology to create a weapon that the Anunnaki didn't already have. So it would have had to have been an alien. We do know from whistleblowers that aliens have set up bases in caves. The alien, also known as Eben, is described in the SOM 101 Special Operations Manual. Using a bit of their DNA, Marduk created a human, but it was small like the Greys. It had the same elongated head. But after a few more tries, a very smart and human-sized hybrid was born. Some proportions were not fully Homo sapien. Big hips and the elongated skull, but this was enough for Marduk to put as a pharaoh. He were known as Artatama. To keep the pharaoh line true to Aten, Marduk, he made a female. Their family tree includes Akhenaten, Queen Nefertiti and their son Tutankhamun, who all had elongated skulls. Marduk, now called Aten, made them change the worshipping back to just him. Monotheism. Did the dad do this before? Answer. Yes, Marduk did, son of Enki. 5. If there were other gods around, why wasn't they the father of Jesus?
If Marduk had red hair and used his own DNA to help create the new pharaohs, that would explain why elongated skulls seem to have red hair, even if the elongated skulls are found outside of Egypt. From the ancient texts, it's clear to see that Enki and Enlil had both blonde hair and blue eyes, but as we know, people, humans, can have a red beard when they don't have any other red hair on their body. This could mean some of the Anunnaki had red hair, and would also explain the giants, Nephilim, having red hair. They were the offspring from the Anunnaki and humans when they mated. But it still leaves the question, why Marduk? Amen, Aten, Amen. The original word for Amen is Egyptian. Amen or Amun was the name of an Egyptian god. This would make sense as Marduk was Amun and would have been Jesus' father, and thus people would say Amen. Having Marduk tell Jesus to only worship one god makes more sense because in Genesis 1:26 it's plural. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. It's clear from the many versions of the Bible that the words have been changed, so there would have been many more cases of plural gods in the Bible. But to control the population, it was best to have one god and not an alien race. This would also explain how Jesus could have done miracles, having a father with the technology to heal people, to destroy lands, to fly in the night sky in Bethlehem as a star. This next part is taken from the book called Black Ops, Aliens, Spirits, Bigfoot and Our Untold History, which is on Amazon.
Please note that when the Bible was being written and rewritten, the people of that time had vocabulary that didn't include modern words. Matthew chapter 1. English Standard Version. Now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way, explaining that Jesus was not a normal pregnancy. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, meaning Joseph should be the father but wasn't, before they came together she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Or you may see it like this: when as his mother Mary was espoused to Joseph before they came together, before they mated, she was found with child of the Holy Ghost. Or the last part might say, with child of the Lord. As you can see, depending on who and when it was translated, the Bible changes. Let's forget for a moment that someone way back translated the original text into different languages, and let's look at Doherty's direct translation. Why would we do this? Well, if you had to describe an aeroplane 2,000 years ago to people that have never heard of one, you would end up using words they do know, like bird, sky, air, carriage, horse, and cart. Now we know many more words and have modern technology, so we could understand the Bible a little differently. Mary found with child of the Lord, translated direct, unconverted Greek to English. She discovered she was holding in her womb something from the Lord. This is strange, as they had words like baby, infant, and child. So why was it written with the word something? You can see why the people that translated that used the word child because they didn't want to use the word something. Luke the doctor said in the New Testament, converted, "You who are highly favored and blessed among women, a woman chosen for whatever reason, her bloodline maybe, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and bring forth a son." Other variations are available, like I mentioned before. Here is that same text direct to English without someone changing it to fit their limited knowledge. You will be taken hold of or ceased in your womb, you shall be overtaken, as enforced, and the power, might, and strength, could this be light of the Lord, will envelop you.
I hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember, this is just my own research. If you feel I'm right, let me know. If you feel I'm wrong and you have your own research to back you up, please do a video. I'd love to see it. Many thanks. Our True History.
Everything is connected. In a world you thought you knew, one book will change the way you look at life forever. 30 years of research explains how Earth was smashed into. Discover the real name of the alien race we call the Anunnaki. Learn why everything started in ancient Mesopotamia, now modern Iraq. Examine the proof between humans, Anunnaki, and Egyptian rulers. You will find out that there were real giants living with humans. The pyramids were not tombs. They were technical devices built by aliens and man. Do you believe the dinosaurs all died out millions of years ago? Think again. Who really is on the dark side of our moon? Understand who really controls Earth. Crop circles are not just created by man. Look inside the book and discover the mysterious forces at work. Bigfoot is not a myth. They are real and connected to aliens. Everything you need to know and so much more at your fingertips. Available from Amazon, Kindle, and OurUntoldHistory.com.
Hello and welcome to another documentary from Our True History. This video is going through the family tree that I created of the Anunnaki. If you haven't watched my other videos on who Jesus' father was and who Yahweh really was, please watch them to understand the family tree better. Let's get on then.
I thought we'd start with King Anu. Now, there is previous kings, etc., to King Anu. However, his actual lineage it sort of skips generations from being a king. So it's quite complicated. So I thought I'd just start with King Anu. I will be doing another video with the previous kings of Nibiru. So King Anu, as you can see there, has been called An, Anuki, Anshar, Dingar, Ilu.
From the translation of the cuneiform tablet, we call Adapa and the food of life, saying, Adapa, before the face of Anu the king, thou art to go to heaven, proving King Anu was a king. Heaven is the ancient word for space.
And in India, Brahma.
Brahma is the creator god in Hindu mythology, responsible for bringing the universe into existence. In this sense, he holds a position of supreme authority and power over the created world. King Anu in Mesopotamian mythology is the god of the heavens and the king of the gods. He is associated with the sky and celestial phenomena, and he holds a central position in the pantheon. Brahma is often regarded as a fatherly figure, not just to humans but to all beings in the universe. He is seen as the progenitor of all life. King Anu, similarly, is a paternal figure in Mesopotamian mythology. He is the father of many gods, including Enlil and Ea, Enki. Supreme authority Brahma's role as the creator places him at the highest level of authority within the Hindu pantheon. King Anu's position as the king of the gods gives him a similar level of authority within the Mesopotamian pantheon.
And his wife here is Antu, also known as Antimon goddess Ki. Now, King Anu had children, so let's have a look down at the children. So Enlil was married to Ninlil. Now, Ninlil's original name was Sud, and she's also known, and the reason why I say she's also known as different names, these ones here, is because different cultures had different names for her. So you'll find that they're all pretty much the same person. Well, they are the same person. It's just they are named differently in different locations. Now, she's also Asherah. Now, and Enlil is El. Go watch my video on who Yahweh really was for the evidence of these two being El and Asherah. So King Anu also had another son and a daughter. So we'll just go along. So these are the son and daughter. So Ea, which was the original name for Enki, is also known as Nudamud, Enkig Lugabanda, Lord of the Abzu. Now Abzu is South Africa, which makes sense. Jehovah. So we've got Yahweh is Enlil and Jehovah is Ea.
The use of Jehovah is specific to certain translations like the King James Version, and is not present in more modern translations where Yahweh or the Lord is commonly used. If you've watched my videos on who Yahweh was and the video called The Lost Book of Our True History, you'll see that the people that copied the older texts and put them in the Bible are not always correct. Look at this passage. Exodus 6, 2, 3. And God spake unto Moses and said unto him, I am Jehovah, and I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob as God Almighty, but by my name Jehovah I was not known to them. If you watch my documentary called Have I Found Out Who Moses Really Was, you'll see it's Enki that is helping Moses, because I believe Enki is his father.
Watch my previous videos for the evidence of that. Lord of the Abzu. Unfortunately, I've done that twice. And in Egypt, he's Ptah. So he's basically the creator of life.
You are about to hear the translation from Moorcroft, from the tablets now in the Columbia University. Here you will see that Ptah is Enki, and Ra is Enki's son Marduk.
In the land of the Two Narrows, the second region under the dominion of Marduk was founded. In the chronicles of the first region, it was known as Magon, the land of the cascading river. Hem-Tar, also known as the dark brown region, was the name given to the land when the inhabitants of the second region muddled their languages. The new language was used by Neteru, the Guardian Watchers, and the Anunnaki. Marduk was honored as Ra, the Bright One, while Enki was honored as Ptah, the Builder.
Which he is in Sumerian as well. And in India, he's actually known as Shiva. Now, the sister of, or the half-sister of Ea, so King Anu did have a concubine, which I'll cover in a sec. Nimna is her original name. She was then given Ninharsag, Nintu, Nimdu, Mami, and there's all these different names, and then Parvati in India.
Parvati, also known as Uma, Gauri, or Shakti, is a major goddess in Hinduism. She's the wife of Lord Shiva, one of the principal deities of Hinduism. Parvati is the wife of Shiva Enki. Although Enki and Ninma was never married, they did have children, and together they form a divine couple known as Shiva-Parvati. She is often seen as the ideal companion to Shiva, balancing his fierce aspects with her gentle nature. Ninhursag, Sumerian goddess, is a prominent goddess in Sumerian history, one of the oldest recorded belief systems in human history. She is also known by various other names like Ninhursanga, Ninma, and Nintur. Ninhursag is primarily a mother goddess associated with fertility, birth, and the nurturing of all living creatures. She is often depicted as a motherly figure, caring for humanity and the natural world. Ninhursag is the consort of Enki, also known as Ea, the god of wisdom and water. Together, they are seen as the creators of humanity and the caretakers of the earth.
She was a concubine, Namu, so you don't really get much more history on her. So if we follow Ea's lineage, he created Adamu and Tiamat. Now, Tiamat's also the name of a planet, but that's the reason why the first female, Homo sapien, was given that name, because they wanted to honour the planet that we're now standing on, because Tiamat broke up and became Earth.
From another tablet in the Moorhen collection, we get the evidence of the planet Tiamat that broke up and formed Earth. We get the evidence that Adamu is not Adam, and we get the evidence that Tiamut was the first female name. This was not Eve. I'll explain Adam and Eve shortly.
What should his name be? Enki questioned. He is a being, not a beast. Ninmah put her hand on the baby's body and stroked her fingers over his dark red skin. I will name him Adamu. That shall be his name. Clay lover, Ninmah was saying. A female. There was a girl born. She expressed her happiness to Ninki. The face and limbs of the infant were extensively examined. Her eyes were healthy, and her ears were as well. Her arms and legs were well formed, with parts that looked like legs and parts that looked like hands. She didn't shake, and her hair was sandy. Ninmah held the young woman in her hands. She whacked her buttocks, and the baby made lovely sounds. Her skin was as immaculate and colourless as that of the Anunnaki. She handed the infant's breastfeeding and upbringing over to Ninki, Enki's wife. What will she be called, Enki? His spouse inquired. She is a being, not a monster. Since she is well dressed and patterned after your look, you have become a role model to female workers. Ninki put her hand on the infant's body and stroked its skin with her fingers. Ninki said, Her name will be Tiamat, the mother of life. Let her be recognized as the planet from whence the earth and moon were formed. From her womb's life essences, more birth-givers will be born.
And Adamu was the very first Homo sapien. He's also called, aka is also Lulu, and if you read some of the ancient texts, they're called primitive workers. That's how you can sort of distinguish. Now, Tiamat is Lilith, not Eve, and again, I cover that in my series called Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, and I prove that Lilith did not know Adam, which was Adapa, which I'll cover in a short while. But so Lilith was the counterpart to Adamu, not Adam or Adapa. So there's a difference between Adam and Adamu, and Tiamat and Lilith. So they're the two main ones there that came first. So Enki's wife is called Damkina, and that's her there. Now, she was actually the daughter of Alula. Now, you can see different names, different spellings there. That's how they sometimes spelt them. And Alula was the very first Anunnaki to arrive here on Earth. And so Damkina was his daughter. So she married Enki. And that's why she changed her name to Ninki when he was given the name Enki. She then became Ninki. So what I'll do is, to save thousands of hours, I'll go through the main ones here, because you can probably guess the other ones. So Ea, which was Enki, had relationships with two Homo sapien people. And one was called Dawn, and the other one was called Dusk. Both of those had children. So Dusk had a female called Titi, or Tai. And that one is also the one that we refer to as Eve. She was the first Homo sapien. So the other ones that I mentioned a minute ago were Homo sapien. These ones are Homo sapien. Technically, she was a demigod, because she was the offspring of a true Anunnaki and a human. So Enki then also had, so these are not created by genetics. These are Enki physically having a relationship with these two. And Adapa, Enki had a relationship with someone that he named Dawn, because it was guess when they gave birth, dawn and dusk. You can probably guess. So she had a child, and the boy was named Adapa. We know him as Adam, and he was the first Homo sapiens sapien male.
From another tablet in the Moorhen collection, we get the evidence that the first Homo sapiens were not as smart as the offspring between an Anunnaki and human. We find out that Enki was the father who art in heaven. If you watch my documentary on the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, you'll see Adam and Eve were on a spaceship for the first 24 years of their life.
She named the boy Adapa, the foundling, and the girl Titi, one with life. Unlike all the other terrestrial children before them, this pair grew up more slowly than humans, but they understood much more quickly. Because of their intelligence, they could speak with words. The girl was beautiful and kind, and her hands were very talented. Ninki, Enki's husband, and Titi acquired a fondness for all the crafts she taught. Adapa Enki's training taught him how to keep records. I delivered a civilized man. He told Isimud that his seed created a new kind of earthling in his image and likeness.
And he was also a demigod, because he was an offspring off of a human and Anunnaki. So while we're here, let's just go down the Adapa route. So as you probably know the story, you've got Cain and Abel, and where is Abel? Abel, where are you? There he is. He's over here. So we've got Cain and Abel, and obviously Cain and Abel had that fight, in which case one of them lost, and it was Abel, and Cain was banished. But Cain ended up having a family line anyway, which goes all the way down. These ones in white are Homo sapiens sapiens, whereas the Anunnakis are all in colour. Blue boy, pink girl. Ea actually had relationships with Batanash, who was a female that was the wife of Lamash. However, Enki, while Lamash was away, as says in the tablets in the Columbia University, he had his wicked way with her, and that's why Noah ended up having white skin, etc. Because, yes, you guessed it, he was... so technically Noah was a demigod, which was why his longevity of life was as long as it was. So Banatash was as you see there, the wife of Lamesh. Now obviously Lamesh doesn't actually have Noah as a child, because that's why it's in white. Now if you read the tablets, you'll see that Lamesh was asked to go away deliberately so that Enki could have his wicked way with his wife. So Dumuzi ended up marrying... Now Inanna is absolutely hugely important in our whole history. So she's also known in Babylonian as Ishtar, and these are the other names. Now she's also known as Freya. Now, she in Norse mythology, that two older gods, not necessarily Odin, etc., but there was two older gods. I'll be doing a video on Norse mythology, but there was two older gods, a female and a male, and they were twins, and they came from, yes, you guessed it, Samaria. So basically, Inanna and her twin brother Utu are the two main, and I say main, I know people will go, well, hang on a minute, what about Thor, what about Loki, what about Odin? No. If you do your homework now, you'll realise that Freya and her brother were older, and that makes a lot of sense because they were twins, and so was Inanna and Utu. So that's why we come to that. Now, Inanna was also known as Kali in Indian, because she was given the Indus Valley in those tablets that I keep mentioning, and her personification, her statues actually match as well. I'll be doing a video on why she is the Statue of Liberty at a later date. Gilgamesh's family, as you see here, goes back to different people. So Gilgamesh is actually the, I just talked about the twin brother. Utu is the great great-grandfather of Gilgamesh. But Inanna actually asked Gilgamesh out in a different text, and Gilgamesh said, "No, I'm not going to go with you. Although you're known as the the goddess of love, she's also known as the goddess of war, and she's also known as someone that will actually happily, and this is in Sumerian and Greek stories, she's happy to, shall we say, sleep with anyone that she can find, including in Norse mythology, she's happy to sleep with the dwarves and the elves. And don't worry, they're not like Tolkien's dwarves and elves. I'll be doing a whole video on that. So Gilgamesh said no to her because he knows that most of the people that sleep with Inanna end up dead in the morning, so it's probably not worth it.
If I've not covered everyone in the video, I've already done many videos with evidence. I will also continue to create more evidence-based videos. Remember to keep an eye out. I'll be adding the Greek and Roman counterparts soon to this family tree. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for your support. Our True History.
The Moorhen collection of Sumerian and Akkadian tablets in Liechtenstein preserves some of the most intriguing Enki and Enlil passages. George Moorhen, the original curator of a private museum, passed on most of his knowledge to his grandson Ryan, who is still deciphering information pieces. The MC2546A tablet in the Moorhen collection begins with clear allusions to Nibiru. The first 4 lines need to be included, and the following interpretation is Ryan's. Line 4. Way stations from Nibiru to Earth will unite the solar family into one kingdom. To figure out how to build stations on other worlds or the planets that orbit them, the first building will be on the moon to test the ideas. A string, an uninterrupted caravan of chariots to replenish and defend.
Hello and welcome to the Lost Book of Our True History, and I'm doing this video because people have said that the book Lost Book of Enki by Zecharia Sitchin is wrong, and in fact so much so that they've even made websites such as this one here which says sitchiniswrong.com, and I felt that's quite bad because I've done my research and I believe he's 100% right. So I thought I'd do a video actually debunking everyone else that says he's wrong. So hopefully this works out correctly. So Zecharia Sitchin is the gentleman here who is an author, or was, unfortunately he's passed now, of many books to do with the Sumerians. Not just the Sumerians, but to do with the Mesopotamian, should I say, because obviously Babylon, there's texts, different language texts within what he's studied. So I don't want to just keep saying Sumerian. We've got to work out now whether or not sitchiniswrong.com is wrong. And the actual author of that, Dr. Michael Heiser, has now passed in February 2023. I did try and contact this person many times, and of course they ignored me because he probably couldn't answer my questions, which is fair enough. But I think it's really bad that that's still out there. And the reason why it's bad is because this guy not only tried to debunk Sitchin, where I've done videos on my Patreon page that debunk him quite badly, he's also a Christian author. So in other words, he does not want his books to be outsold by alien books when he's trying to pretend that there's a God. And I say pretend because as you watch this video, you'll realise that the gods that come first were the Anunnaki. So, let's see now whether or not there is anything called the Anunnaki, because that is the whole premise of this. And the translations come down to those that from heaven came to earth. And here we have the first translation of the word Anunnaki. And this is not by Zecharia Sitchin. Everything that I'm showing you is not by Zecharia Sitchin, because otherwise it will be me talking about his work. So this one here is translations of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is basically a series of tablets. And this was translated by Maureen Gallery Kovacs. And as you see there, the translation they've come up with is Anunnaki. And guess what they've called them? The Great Gods. Now that's not what they've called them, that's what's in the tablets. This is what's translated. Now, again, going back to the word Anunnaki, is there such a word that Zachariah Sitchin keeps waffling on about? There is. So this is the first one of many that I'm going to be showing you. So this is from, as I just mentioned there, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Here is another word where it says Anunnaki by a different translator, Samuel Noah Kramer. So again, not Zachariah Sitchin. How many times is the word Anunnaki in here? We'll just keep going. Anunnaki, Anunnaki, Anunnaki. So, if Zachariah Sitchin is wrong with the word Anunnaki, then everyone else is wrong. But I haven't finished yet. There's other translations from other people. Let's have a look here. Another translation there. So this one is from Myths. It's crazy because it's called Myths from Mesopotamia. However, the Bible copies from it. So how can it be myths? 2 million tablets that we found that we're aware of. Obviously, some factions hide certain tablets that we would love to see, but basically we're aware of 2 million tablets. And it's a myth. And yet the Bible copies from these, and I'll prove all that as we go. So this person done this in 1912, I believe, the translation. As you see, Anunnaki, 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 all in this other person, not Zachariah Sitchin's translations, and it goes on. Another one here, the Babylonian legends of creation. So this is from the Babylonian text, not Sumerian text. That's why I say you have to. And this one's 1921 down the bottom there. That was translated by, I'm trying to find the person's name, but it's in the British Museum there. Does the British Museum hold something that has the word Anunnaki? Oh, there it is. Yep, there it is again. And there it is again, showing the actual tablet that it comes from, and so on. I can just keep clicking. You see the word Anunnaki. So the word Anunnaki is real. If you look here, asked in ChatGPT. Now, I know you're going to say, well, that's biased. It is to a point, I'll give you that. So I asked various questions. I always ask questions here just to see what it says. And look what this translates the word to. Look at that. It says, now this isn't Sitchin, this isn't a person, this is a computer, artificial intelligence that's read all of these tablets. And trust me, when you ask it questions, it knows a lot. So this has even said the word Anunnaki translates to those from the heavens came in Sumerian. Those from the heavens came. Now this person here, Dr. Michael Heiser, back in 2012, I sent him an email because I saw one of his videos where he said no, it was called princely seeds. So here's a video with Dr. Michael Heiser. The actual title on YouTube is called Sitchin Was a Liar by Dr. Michael Heiser, Debunking Ancient Aliens.
The term itself means of royal seed or princely seed.
Okay, so he's talking about the Anunnaki there as the term. Only Enlil, Enki, and Nimna are described here on Earth as the siblings of King Anu. Now, King Anu is the one that resided on Nibiru, which was the king. So in other words, the only princes and princesses we have are the three. So that was Enlil, Ea, which was original name for Enki, and Nimna, which was the original name for Ninharsag. So let's look a little bit further here. So here we're looking at a passage in the Babylonian flood story translated in 1912, not by Zachariah Sitchin. This is just one of many where it says, the Anunnaki lifted up their torches. So the Anunnaki here clearly are not the brothers and sisters, because if you actually read the whole of this passage, you'll see that there's no mention of Enlil and Enki at that point regarding them being with the group of Anunnaki that lifted up their torches. So we've got proof that there are princely seeds. Yes, Enlil, Enki, and Ninharsag or Nimna. But the Anunnaki does not mean that it's just those three, because clearly here, this is just one. You can go and look it up and you'll find Anunnaki's mentioned many a time without Enlil, Enki, or Ninharsag being involved. In other words, there was 900 Anunnaki originally came down. Anunnaki wasn't the actual original name for the race. I believe the race name is gods, or God, just like humans. And obviously it was down the line, it was translated into Elohim, and obviously we all praise gods, but people would praise humans if we went to their planet and created workers. So we've got proof here that Dr. Michael Heiser was wrong in terms of the Anunnaki wasn't just for princely seeds. Now the other part of this is when you break down the word Anunnaki, it actually does end up with the word Kai, which is the last word, being earth, and Kai is an actual name for earth back from them days. So it makes sense that the actual breakdown, which is how Zecharia Sitchin did it, Anunnaki, those that came from heaven, to earth, Ki being earth.
JKI, place. Today's word is ki, which means place. It can also mean ground or earth, and is a term for the netherworld. Ki is also used as a determinative indicating something is the name of a place, but instead of being put before the place name, as is usual for determinatives, it's put after the place name. Lagash Kai, for example, to talk about the city of Lagash. You will find that everywhere except that Kai is the meaning of earth. There is nowhere that says Ki means princely seeds or royal blood or anything that Dr. Michael S. Heiser said it does. As far as I can tell, he was the only one that translated Anunnaki to mean what he said.
Long before the stories in the Bible, a different tale of creation was etched in the oldest known tablets of humanity. This is our true history. Meet the Anunnaki, the gods who came to Earth from a distant world. They shaped our existence and left their mark on history. Unlike any other children's book, our true history reveals the hidden truths. The Anunnaki's quest for gold in Africa, Enki, the kind-hearted god, defying his brother Enlil to save Noah from the Great Flood, and how Adam and Eve's origins trace back to these celestial beings. Each page is not just a story, but a gateway to evidence. Discover the links and dive into the ancient tablets that predate the Bible, proving these incredible events. Explore Our True History, now available on Amazon. It's time to discover the story that was always meant to be told.
Before I move on to the really juicy stuff, I have to address the opposition for the Lost Book of Enki, and that would be the Bible. And the reason for that is because when you read the Bible and you read the Lost Book of Enki, you'll find many of the same instances in there as told by Zecharia Sitchin. Later on we will get to the actual translations of the original text to show that they are copies in the Bible from the older texts. There's always some debate on who wrote the Bible. Now there's apparently 12 apostles that were chosen to write the Bible. However, Moses did apparently write some of the earlier stuff because he was given the information by God so that he could write down the old information that happened before he was even born. There's a problem here because some of these people have actually copied similar to what Moses said. However, they weren't given the divine information, in which case, how did they get the information to write about stuff that they weren't privy to? So they either copied Moses and changed it, because obviously it's not word for word, or it wasn't them that wrote it, or they was copying older texts. I know which one I'll go with. The Sumerian language is the oldest language in the world. In fact, the oldest written proof of the Sumerian language was first found on a Kish tablet, which is now Iraq, dating back to approximately 3500 BC. However, as we will go through these dates, through this long video that I'm doing, we will see that the dates are manufactured by mainstream to fit their narrative, because they certainly don't want to tell us that these tablets are 9,000 years old as opposed to 3,500. But we will get to all of that as we go along. Contradictions in the Bible. Now, if we're going to go through Zecharia Sitchin's book, we have to see whether or not the competition, which is the Bible, actually has got things wrong, and then we'll look at the Lost Book of Enki, done by Zecharia Sitchin, to see whether there's any contradictions in that, as in the translations. So here we have many contradictions, and this isn't me making them up. You anyone can find all the contradictions. In fact, that's how I first realised that there was issues with the Bible, was when I was trying to learn way back when I was very young about our history, and it turns out there was just too many contradictions. I have a very logical brain, and I can't see why these contradictions would be there. And as you see, it just goes on and on and on. There's at least 144 contradictions in the Bible. So now we need to see whether or not the Sumerian cuneiform has any contradictions. Turns out there is none. Even ChatGPT can't give us any examples of any contradictions. However, if you look here, yes, it says there are inconsistencies in the Bible. So even ChatGPT knows that there are errors in the Bible compared to the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. You could argue that there's less tablets than there are pages in the Bible. So let's have a look how many words there are approximately in a Bible. 773,746 words in the Bible, and that consists of about 1,200 pages. So let's have a look now at how many tablets there are of Sumerian. So between 30,000 and 100,000 tablets that have been translated. Nearly 2 million that have been found. But so if we just take the middle of that, let's say 70,000, where it says between 30,000 and 100,000, let's take 70,000. Now you then break down how many words are on a Sumerian tablet, which works out to be 4,400 approximately. So then you times that by the 70,000 books, and you end up with a hell of a lot bigger number. I think that's 308 million words, compared to the Bible, which has 773,000. Not even a million. Not even a million. And we've got here 308 million. So when you've got 308 million words and not one contradicts itself, compared to a Bible with only 1,200 pages and 773,746 words, the logic between the amount of words and pages compared to the Sumerian cuneiform, compared to the amount of contradictions in the Bible, one would argue that the Sumerian tablets would logically be the first port of call you would go to if you want to research your true history, would you not? Because I would. The cuneiform tablets actually have anything that the Bible may have copied from. So just to let you know, the cuneiform writing is a writing style. So for example, we have calligraphy, which is a writing style, and cuneiform is a writing style. So other people that followed on from the Sumerians, such as Babylonians and Akkadians, they actually adopted the same style of writing, but in clay tablets, but it wasn't the Sumerian alphabet. For example, it would have then been their own alphabet, the Babylonian and Akkadian. Just giving you a distinction there between what the Sumerian tablets, when I'm talking about Sumerian, I'm physically talking about the place where they wrote Sumerian tablets, whereas if I mention cuneiform, then it could be Babylonian, Sumerian, Akkadian, and possibly some other languages that may have also used that style of writing. Now here is a translation book done by Robert W. Rogers in 1912, and it's called The Cuneiform Parallels of the Old Testament. Obviously I'm not going to sit here and read out absolutely everything, but you can probably guess what that's saying back in 1912, before the Rockefellers had their chance to change history. So this person here had translated many of the tablets and said, hang on a minute, this predates the Bible, and yet the Bible, or the Old Testament, is saying pretty much the same thing, but obviously the translations are different. Now here is a list of when these languages first came out, and as you see down the line, Hebrew is way down the line. So many words have been taken from different languages for the Hebrew Bibles, and we know that because we've got words like angel, If you look here, you'll see the word angel was actually a Greek word, but the direct translation at the very beginning is messenger. Messenger. Obviously, we've changed it over time to add words like harbinger, angel of death. That is all made up by man. Why they did that, I don't know, but you know what people are like. So there's no evidence of angel of death whatsoever in ancient texts. It's just something that we've bolted on. So we've got proof that the Hebrew definitely copied older text with the word, for example, angel, which should be messenger. Doesn't mean it's spiritual. We've added the spiritual. And the reason why we've added the spiritual is because the messengers would go up and down into heaven in the older text, which I will come to, don't worry. And the reason why they go up and down to heaven is because heaven is space. That's the word back then for space. So why are they going up and down, telling Enki what's going on and telling Enlil what's going on up in space, and even taking some of the characters of old, as it says in the Bible, as well as it says in the ancient text, which I'll get to, is because they were Anunnaki messengers. And these messengers also had titles. So, for example, what we now call as an archangel would be a pilot. And I'll prove all that later on when we get to talking about the messengers, which are actually in the old translations. There's no word for angel back then, it was messenger, and the messenger would do this and do that. We have now bolted on spiritual simply because they go up into heaven and come back down. Do we call an astronaut spiritual? No, we don't. So it's so easy for us to just bolt on whatever we want. And the interesting thing was, I was listening to a religious radio station, and one of the presenters was asked, how come an angel can come down? And do you know what this religious person said? He said, well, they manifest themselves into a human form. What a load of crap. Because if he can make up that, because there's no evidence whatsoever, there's zero evidence in the Bible that they manifest into human form, because they are Anunnaki and they're messengers. So they go to people's houses and chat with them and go and sit down and have dinner with them and breakfast. I could then go by the Bible and say they are transformers, robots in disguise, because if you can make up anything, and this religious person did on his radio station, because he can't find the reason, because obviously he's not looking at the proper texts. So if he can't find the right reason, all he's done is shoehorned an explanation in. This is why I couldn't look at the Bible properly back in the day, because I need to have the logical reasons for it. I can't just have make up crap lies to fit the agenda that you want.
It's possible that some offspring from the Anunnaki and humans were given the role of messenger. This would allow the Anunnaki to stay out of the way of humans. Here are a few examples of why they think they are angels. Messengers transformed into a human form. Genesis 18, 1, 2, New International Version. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. This passage describes the appearance of 3 men who are later revealed to be angels visiting Abraham. They appear in human form and interact with Abraham, delivering a message about the upcoming birth of his son Isaac. That does not mean they transformed, it means 3 Anunnaki came to meet Abraham. Hebrews 13, 2, New International Version. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. This verse suggests that some individuals have unknowingly shown hospitality to angels appearing as ordinary human strangers. This also doesn't say they transformed. As you can see, they fill in the blanks to fit their idea. Judges 13, 3, 6, New International Version. The angel of the Lord appeared to her, Samson's mother, and said, "You are barren and childless, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son." Here the angel of the Lord appears to Samson's mother and speaks to her, indicating that the angel took on a visible form recognizable to her. Again, another one where an Anunnaki appeared, because he went to them. It doesn't say he appeared from nothing. My friend appeared to me the other day. It was nice he took the time to see me. My friend was not an angel, but still appeared to me.
And another word other than angel is Elohim. So Elohim was plural, by the way, gods, and is a Hebrew word meaning gods. Of course, the original word would be gods, which case we've proved that the Hebrew did copy the older texts, because where else would they have got the word God from if not from something that they copied from, which is why it says it's a copy of the word gods, which is plural. And also, the interesting part here is the Hebrew version gives the impression that it belongs to a single deity, particularly the God of Israel. So we've got the Bible literally saying that God of Israel is God. But of course, God wasn't in Israel, was he? He was up in heaven, in space. Well, actually, funny enough, Enlil did set up his home when Enlil is one of the Anunnaki, and he would be the main supreme god. However, our father, who was the one who created humans, would be Enki, the supreme god, the wrathful god, the one that wanted to wipe us out, as per the Bible, as per the ancient texts, had a place in Israel with a wife.
According to Jewish tradition and belief, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is considered a significant location associated with the presence of God. This building is a reconstruction of the original, Enlil's temple. All the major Anunnaki had temples, and I'll show that later in the video.
Even the fact that the Enulites were the ones that were sent into battle, not Israelites, and that's because it was Enlil's lot.
Exodus 19, 5, 6, New International Version. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a power-hungry leader that wants the Enlilites to obey him. Compared to his half-brother Enki, I can't see an almighty being having favorites of all his children. Then later wanted to kill them. Exodus 32, 9, 10, New International Version, during the time when Moses was on Mount Sinai receiving the 10 Commandments. The Israelites, in Moses' absence, created a golden calf and worshipped it as a false god. God expressed anger and considered destroying the Israelites. The passage states, "I have seen these people," the Lord said to Moses, "and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation."
Dear Patreon users, so I've just done a post showing the full translation of the tablet in the British Museum about Noah's Ark. So I thought I'd read it out because some people may not know what some of it means. So the actual tablet starts with Enki. Now, although this translation doesn't actually say it, the head curator of the British Museum actually says it. So some people are deliberately trying to not add the word Enki. However, in this particular video here, if you want to go and watch that, Ivan Vinkel, the Ark before, he actually admits that the original top of it says Enki. Now, obviously, religious people do not want you to know that it says Enki, because Enki was one of the Anunnaki and not the almighty being that people want to believe in. So, let's have a look then. Sorry about the wobbly camera work. Wool, read wool. So, what he's doing here is Enki has been told in a dream by Gaozu, who was the emissary of, that he believes was the emissary of the creator of everything, which is not the God in the Bible, because the God in the Bible are the Anunnaki. So, keep up. So the emissary actually left a tablet beside Enki's bed, and when he woke up from the dream, the tablet was actually there. Dun dun dun. So there was an assembly with Enlil, knowing that there will be a terrible flood because Nibiru will be coming back round. The next time it comes round, it's going to cause a huge tsunami. And so the assembly decided to allow everyone to die, except for Enki. He had to swear to say that he will not tell anyone, any human, about this impending doom. So this is why he's gone to Noah's, we'll call him Noah for the moment, that wasn't his real name at the time. So he's gone and stood in the bedroom wall, by the bedroom wall outside, so Noah couldn't see him, and it was made of reed, as they did back then. Obviously the palaces were made of stone, but people like Noah only had a sort of a stick hut, so to speak. So Enki says, read wool, wool, read wool, read wool. In other words, I'm not talking to any humans, and if any humans accidentally hear me, that's their problem. In other words, he was deliberately doing it so that... Then he writes, Artrahasis, pay heed to my advice. Now, a lot of people seem to think Artrahasis was the name of Noah, or one of the names of Noah, because it says so here. But no, because if he said, Noah, pay heed to my advice, then he's broken his oath. So there was no point in him saying, wool, read wool. So, unfortunately, those researchers are not as smart as they should be, because you can't have him telling the wool and then saying, hey, Noah, also... So Artrahasis was not the name. If you want to know the name, who Artrahasis was, on my Patreon page under collections, or scroll all the way down, there's a video on who Moses was, and you'll probably get the idea now because I've kind of given it away, but go watch that. So Artrahasis, so that's not, I don't know what Artrahasis is. I mean, there's a tablet called Artrahasis, but it's not Noah, basically. It's more than likely Moses. Pay heed to my advice, that you may live forever. Destroy your house and build a boat, because obviously the flood. Spurn your property and save life. Draw out the boat that you will make on a circular plane. Now, the boat is actually not like the normal boats you normally see, which are that kind of shape. It is actually like a donut without the hole. So it's a sealed circular squashed ball, basically, with no they have to drill to get back out. So in other words, it was watertight. Obviously it makes sense, because if your boat's going to be thrashed around with the tsunami the size that reaches the sky, then her length and breadth must be equal, or will be equal. That's because obviously in a circle everything's equal. Let the floor area be one field. Let her sides be Ninden high. I don't know what that is. I tried looking that up. You saw Keanu ropes. Now that is just Kemp, so that's what that is. And also Ursula ropes, rushes for a, and then coracle before. Let someone else twist the fronds and palm fibre for you. It will surely consume. So that actually works out to be 300 days. That's actually into hours, but it works out 300 days, which is interesting because there's some tablets that give the impression that it's going to take 7 days. So I'm not quite sure how that works, because obviously if that's 300 days, now that makes sense, because 300 days is just slightly less than one of our years, which isn't that long when the Anunnaki's year is 3,600, so one of our years is next to nothing for them. I set in place 30 ribs. This is obviously part of the boat, which were 1 parsec vissel thick. So parsec 2 is the name of the tree. And then Tin Ninden long, I set up 3,600 stanchions, which is like an upstanding vertical rib, shall we say, or bars, which were half a parsec 2 vessel thick, half a Ninden high. I constructed her cabins above and below. So he's already done some of the work here, if you actually listen. I pointed 1 finger at the bitumen for her outsides. I apportioned 1 finger of bitumen for her interior. I had already poured out the finger of bitumen into her cabins. I caused the kilns to be loaded with over 28,000 sutu. Again, that's time, hours worth of work of bitumen. I poured again 3,600. That's not directly hours. That's not like 3,600 hours. You have to do the math to turn that into whatever it is. And Itu bitumen within. The bitumen did not come to the surface, so I added 5 fingers of lard. So he's already done a lot of work. I ordered the kilns to be loaded in equal measure. Tamarisk wood, which is obviously a wood, and stalks, and then completed the mixture. So he's already done a lot of work for our friend Noah, who at the time in another tablet is called Zazudra. So this here where it says Artrahas is not, you can't have him telling the reed wall and then telling the actual name, because that's terrible, because he's actually wrote down here. He would have been totally busted. Obviously he was busted in the end, because they found Noah on the top of Mount Ararat in the boat. So no almighty being, unfortunately. It was Enki that did all the work. Otherwise God would have got on with half the work already if you read this. So obviously no, not an almighty being. Hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. Wrong. So there's some people out there that say that they can read Sumerian cuneiform, and all the other people that's been translated it for over 200 years are completely and utterly wrong. In which case, the people now that say that they can read Sumerian cuneiform say that the previous people were just making up gibberish, even though when they actually translate it, it actually makes sense. But there's a problem also, is things like the Epic of Gilgamesh. There is others. Epic of Gilgamesh is in many different languages: Sumerian, Akkadian, Old Babylonian, Standard Babylonian, Hittite, which all say the same thing. So when the proper researchers translate the tablets and they match the Old Babylonian, Standard Babylonian, etc., when they match, that would be impossible if this was just all gibberish made up by the translators, and that this one modern person seems to think that he knows what it actually says. So no, you can't have that. It's impossible. Just going to give a shout out to Atlantis, because Atlantis is connected to Egypt because centuries ago Atlantis was in some sort of war, or the island sank, which is the story that comes out, and the people that was there were more advanced than others, and they travelled the world after their island or ship, or whatever you want to call it, was destroyed, and they went to Egypt, and Egyptians then told the story of that to someone that Plato knew a couple of 100 or 1,000 years later, and then Plato wrote about it. But there's a person called Edgar Cayce who is a clairvoyant, or was a clairvoyant, and he spoke frequently of Atlantis, and a lot of the things he said came true. Now, he also said that underneath the Sphinx was the Hall of Records. Now, the Hall of Records is literally records of absolutely everything, and I'll talk about. I hope to tell you what Atlantis was and who was in it. I know there's so many stories out there that it was different races and the Lemurians, etc., etc., but we have to go by the ancient texts. Now, I know I've said this many a times before, but the ancient text, hundreds of thousands of these found in the 1800s, and they all have a complete narrative. They're brand new text, language that actually has Aramaic, Babylonian, etc., that follow on from that. So we have to agree these are real. So now we know they're real. The Anunnaki actually say in their tablets that they build their cities in circles, which is very interesting, because when you go to Plato's description, they're in concentric circles. So the Anunnaki actually also build. Now, the Anunnaki were around when the Atlanteans would have been around. So the Anunnaki never wrote about another alien race whatsoever. So we can only then assume that it was the Anunnaki. Now, there were different factions at this time. So this was the time when Ra was Marduk. Marduk turned into Ra and had issues with Iana. And all these different locations had different factions of groups. Enlil's groups, Enki's groups, and obviously their offsprings ended up creating their own groups, and so there was so many different factions. So what happened is Iana managed to persuade Enlil. Enki agreed, but he thought no one would know where the nuclear weapons were. So if you watch my other videos, you'll see that there was nuclear weapons brought by Alalula when he first arrived. Enlil knew where they were. So anyway, Iana managed to persuade them to try and blow up, yes, Marduk. However, they didn't succeed. But what they did do with the 7 nuclear weapons is wipe out many of these type of locations, and we know that because there's here it says researchers find proof of ancient atomic war. That's in Mesopotamia, in India as well. So we know that there was these atomic explosions, and even the Bible talks about flesh rotting, etc., etc. So we know roughly the time that that happened because of researchers, plus obviously the time that the book talks about Ayana wanting to attack Ra. So the logic is that it was one of those cities that got destroyed by one of those missiles, rockets, nukes, and it just makes sense. Wow, we now know who the Atlanteans are, thanks to my last video. After 30 years of research, I think I concluded it quite successfully. No one's debunked it. And so the Atlanteans basically were the Aigigi, which were the young Anunnaki, which, if you don't know who the Anunnaki are, please go and watch my videos or do some research. So basically, the Aigigi were warned, along with the other cities that were about to be destroyed, to vacate the cities. Now, the cities that the Anunnaki built are in circles, and that's exactly what Plato said. Now, the Aigigi were Anunnaki, even though they were the younger ones, and they had technology. So when they left and travelled to Egypt, they would then tell their story that their city's just been destroyed, which makes sense. So if you're interested in finding out more, watch the previous video to this, or start from video 1 onwards, because the video you've all been waiting for, the Greek person Plato and his story of Atlantis. Well, if you've watched my other videos, you know that I've mentioned who was on Atlantis. In other words, there was a place, in my opinion. However, over the next few videos, I'm going to be showing you why you cannot believe what was written by Plato about Atlantis. So even though I sort of contradict myself by saying there was such a place, I'm actually explaining in the next few videos why people are crazy to actually read his writings and believe anything else other than that there was a place. In this video, I'm going to be explaining why I think Atlantis is real, and in the next video I'll be explaining why you can't believe 99% of what Plato said. Now, the reason why I believe it's real is because the description of Atlantis is given that it's in concentric circles. If you've watched my previous videos, you know that the Anunnaki built their cities in concentric circles. So is that a coincidence that Plato, some 9,000 years after the supposed Atlantis was around, actually guessed that concentric circles was how the Anunnaki built their cities? The actual date here of when Plato wrote about it was 360 BC, but he's referring in his writings to around 9,000 years before that. Now, if you go along with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which is an early rendition of what it looked like, the dates match. Why you can't believe exactly what Plato says. Basically, I won't go and bore you with who said what and when, but over a very long period of time, 9,000 years, supposedly somewhere in Egypt, there was writings on a wall about Atlantis. Now, this was then told to someone by priests in Egypt, who then eventually, very long story, loads of different people involved, but basically Plato ended up with the information and then wrote about it. So we're talking a span of 9,000 years to remember everything that someone said. So have a look at this, and this is some of the information that's in there. Now, some of the information does ring true. This is why I said you can't believe 100%. So, for example, where it says that the gods split up the land. Now, if you go back to Sumerian texts, they did do that. They drew straws. And also in ancient Greece, Zeus, etc., also split up the lands. So let's have a listen to how much information was passed down that would have supposedly been written on Egyptian walls.
There was a plain which is said to have been the fairest of all plains and very fertile. near the plain again, and also in the centre of the island at a distance of about 50 stadia, there was a mountain, not very high.
Okay, you could believe that they wrote
dwelt
that.
all round, making alternate zones of sea and land, larger and smaller.
Okay, you could believe that that was
one
written.
of warm water and the other of cold, and making every variety of food to spring up abundantly from the soil.
Okay, starting to get a lot of information there on written walls.
Now, Atlas had a numerous and honourable family, and they retained the kingdom, the eldest son handing it on to his eldest son for many generations. And they,
as you see, I'm going along here.
Both those which live in lakes and marshes and rivers, and also for those who live in mountains and on plains.
This is all supposedly written on a tablet on a wall.
Every king surpassing the one who went before him to the utmost of his power, until they made the building a marvel to behold. Which the palace was situated had a diameter of 5 stadia. All this, including the zones and the bridge, which...
So you really think they put the measurements on a hieroglyphics on a wall in a temple somewhere in Egypt that we've never found, that then someone had to remember all of this to give it to someone else that gave it, eventually got to Plato? Seriously? There's just too much information.
The palaces in the interior of the citadel were constructed on this wise. In the centre was a holy temple dedicated to Cleito and Poseidon, which remained inaccessible and was surrounded...
I mean, this just goes on, as you can see. We're only halfway through, so too much information to be true. Before I tell you where I believe Atlantis is, we need to look at where the other researchers go wrong to work out whether I'm the right one and the only person that's ever figured it out. And the reason for that is because they go by Plato. And Plato was around 348 BCE. And Plato talks about Atlantis being 9,000 years before his time. So if we have a look here, around 11,000 to 12,000 years ago, we were hunter-gatherers. In other words, Uggs, lots of Uggs as their language. In other words, no written language, etc. came until thousands and thousands of years later, which means everything would be verbal unless we've got proof that there was a written language, even by the Atlanteans themselves, which we don't. So we have to assume then that the information is verbal. Now, in Plato's description, he says that Atlantis is 3,100 miles away from Athens. Now, people go by this, and this is what's crazy. They shouldn't do that, because not only are these our ancestors 9,000 years ago were Ugg people, Ugg. Also, Athens didn't actually come into existence until then. So that's a few thousand years, well, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years before Athens actually was even founded. So how they could work out where Athens was, it wouldn't even been called Athens 9,000 years before that, or 8,700 years, whatever it is, before that. So this is why researchers go way wrong when they're looking at everything to do with Plato's writings. And obviously, if you've read or listened to an audiobook of Plato's writing, you will come across the fact that he pinpoints things so accurately that there's so much information that would have been passed down Chinese whispers from 9,000 years to an Egyptian priest who gave it to a friend of Plato's, who then gave it to Plato, and they described so much in so much detail: smells, colours, depth of lakes. No, absolutely no. Now, the other problem is here it says in Plato's, the founders of Atlantis were said to be half god, half human. Now, we have to see whether there was any other writings out there, and funny enough, there was. Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about Ningazida, or Thoth, same person, and obviously he had offspring, so he was an Anunnaki, he was a god, and he had offspring which would have been demigods, which would have also been in that era. Now, if you've watched my previous video about who the Anunnaki were, you know I'm referring to the concentric circles. I'm going to run out of time here. Keep watching, because hopefully you're now understanding that you can't fully believe everything in Plato's version, which is what a lot of people, virtually everyone, bases their research. Before I tell you where I believe Atlantis is, we need to look at where the other researchers go wrong to work out whether I'm the right one and the only person that's ever figured it out. And the reason for that is because they go by Plato. and Plato was around 348 BCE. And Plato talks about Atlantis being 9,000 years before his time. So if we have a look here, around 11,000 to 12,000 years ago, we were hunter-gatherers. In other words, Uggs, lots of Uggs as their language. In other words, no written language, etc. came until thousands and thousands of years later, which means everything would be verbal unless we've got proof that there was a written language, even by the Atlanteans themselves, which we don't. So we have to assume then that the information is verbal. Now, in Plato's description, he says that Atlantis is 3,100 miles away from Athens. Now, people go by this, and this is what's crazy. They shouldn't do that, because not only are these our ancestors 9,000 years ago were Ugg people, Ugg. Also, Athens didn't actually come into existence until then. So that's a few thousand years, well, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years before Athens actually was even founded. So how they could work out where Athens was, it wouldn't even been called Athens 9,000 years before that, or 8,700 years, whatever it is, before that. So this is why researchers go way wrong when they're looking at everything to do with Plato's writings. And obviously, if you've read or listened to an audiobook of Plato's writing, you will come across the fact that he pinpoints things so accurately that there's so much information that would have been passed down Chinese whispers from 9,000 years to an Egyptian priest who gave it to a friend of Plato's, who then gave it to Plato, and they described so much in so much detail: smells, colours, depth of lakes. No, absolutely no. Now, the other problem is here it says in Plato's, the founders of Atlantis were said to be half god, half human. Now, we have to see whether there was any other writings out there, and funny enough, there was. Emerald Tablets of Thoth talk about Ningazida, or Thoth, same person, and obviously he had offspring, so he was an Anunnaki, he was a god, and he had offspring which would have been demigods, which would have also been in that era. Now, if you've watched my previous video about who the Anunnaki were, you know I'm referring to the concentric circles. I'm going to run out of time here. Keep watching, because hopefully you're now understanding that you can't fully believe everything in Plato's version, which is what a lot of people, virtually everyone, bases their research. As I get closer to telling you where I believe Atlantis is, I really need you to understand why I got to that conclusion, because if I just told you where it is, you'd be going, that doesn't make sense. But as you've already seen in my previous video, I prove that the other researchers, unfortunately, have been following Plato and therefore have got it wrong. So the reason why I feel I've got it right is because I've gone through these steps. So basically, who were the players at the time? Now, if you watch one of my earlier videos, I prove again who the Atlanteans were. No one's debunked it. Do we have any records of destruction 9,000 years ago? Well, actually we do, and that's another reason why I believe we know where it is. And where were the players? Really important, because obviously where the other people were on Earth relates to where Atlantis is, believe it or not. And have we found anything under the water? In other words, anything sunk? Yes, we can't trust Plato's version because so many of his claims are easily debunked, such as Atlantis being 150 miles away from Athens, when Athens wasn't even around for another 8,000 years. Same for the name of the Pillars of Hercules. He didn't arrive until 8,000 years later. But we can say a few things ring true. 1. City built in circles. We know the Anunnaki did this. 2. It was sunk. Emerald Tablets of Thoth agree with this. 3. Some of the people from Atlantis went to Egypt. Emerald Tablets of Thoth also agree with this. They are the only things we can say for sure. Everything else is made up as a huge story, as I've proven in my previous videos. So, where do I think Atlantis is? I believe it is here. The reasons why are: number 1, the name Heraclean was given to the sunken city because divers found one tablet with that name on. They found other tablets with that name on, but because Heraclean was mentioned in another tablet found in Egypt, they assumed it was that city. Number 2, Researchers have agreed it was a city that sank, and that they say that 64 ships sank at the same time. Number 3, the majority of it was sunk. Researchers state the hard clay turned rapidly into liquid and the buildings collapsed into the water. This would match with Thoth's account in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Ships, however, would not have sank if it was just the clay that went soft. Something attacked the ships. Number 4, the ancient Sumerian texts that have been translated talk about a pyramid war around 8,000 to 9,000 years ago, where Inanna went around in her chariot destroying cities from above. Number 5, all of the Anunnaki who were there at the time all stayed local to Mesopotamia and Egypt. None of them were at that time in South Africa or anywhere else. Number 6, the Anunnaki built their cities in circles, and there is no record of any other advanced race on the planet ever other than the Anunnaki. Divers found walls in circles. The actual words are, the city extended all around the temple, and a network of canals in and around the city must have given it a lake-dwelling appearance. Number 7, Ningazida, who was the Anunnaki that designed the pyramids, see Lost Book of Enki and Emerald Tablets of Thoth, built Atlantis, and being the master builder he was, Atlantis would have been more sophisticated than the other cities. Ningazida, Thoth, was also warned off Atlantis before Iana attacked, trying to kill Marduk. He left and took his Anunnaki tech with him to Egypt. See the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Number 9. Atlantis was within walking distance of Egypt, but at the time Marduk, who was also known as Ra, was the leader in Egypt. Number 10. Divers found statues of Amun, who we know as Ra, who was Marduk as the Anunnaki. Why him and not any of the other gods or pharaohs from that dynasty? Number 11. The great temple at Thonos Heracleion was that of Kernush-nu Thoth, as we call him. Number 12. Plato said that to get to Atlantis you need to go through the Pillars of Hercules. However, we know they were not called that 9,000 years ago, but where Plato is talking about is an actual place later named that. The place you would have to pass through to get to Heracleion. Number 13. Over time, the remaining part of the city finally collapsed into the sea. Number 14. Heracleion is now actually informally known as Egypt's Atlantis.
This holiday season, dive into the extraordinary with 2 captivating books that unveil the mysteries of our untold history. From the Anunnaki to Atlantis, mermaids, pixies, black ops, aliens, Bigfoot, giants, and to the elusive men in black, unravel the secrets behind ghosts, crop circles, and much more. Be prepared for mind-bending revelations as the evidence is dissected from different angles, providing answers